would you agree in the late 80s, it was far more like difficult to be a guitarist and be on a record pre-digital than it is today? I mean, there was probably very little to no, quote, cheating back then with any kind of record. Yeah.
Yeah. Especially like in thrash, you know what I mean? Like the right hand, like that palm muting tightness, like you can't fake that, that's like, especially then, like you can't punch in like you can now with like a Pro Tools session, you know what I mean? You can't like mix and match, a reamp and do all this other crazy stuff. And then the solos too. It's like, like these, like you were saying, these kids some of these guys are like in their like high school and they're playing on that level, this virtuoso level, rhythm and lead. And it's like, back then it was like a real accomplishment to be in a band and make a record and do what these guys were doing.
Greetings, Legion. Welcome to another episode of Into the Necrosphere, episode 282. I'm joined this week by my very good friends and fellow horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse, Mike Hill and Mike Scondotto. If they're on the show, you know that it means we have us a 666 countdown. The theme for this installment is a celebration of the very best in 80s thrash metal albums, with one very important twist: no albums allowed by any of the big four. So that means no release by Metallica, none by Megadeth, 0 by Slayer, and absolutely nothing by Anthrax. That is going to be coming your way very shortly, but before we get to that, we need to get the juices flowing with a bit of unsanctioned filth. Fugitive is a band I have mentioned many times on the podcast. Inexplicably, they are still unsigned. But that doesn't matter, because for your listening pleasure, here they are now with a brand new single entitled Spheres of Virulence.
Consistent paths, yet inferno of delusion. With calcium and broken glass, will to resist the undertow.
Spheres of Virulence by Fugitive, a band who inexplicably are unsigned, although I can't imagine that's going to last very long. They do have an open invite. Every single man in the band is welcome to come on this podcast anytime they so choose. That is, in my opinion, the very best thrash song released by a band not called Testament since the year 2000. Absolutely magnificent, and if you like what you heard, I'll post their Bandcamp link in the description to the podcast. Head over there, buy yourself some music, let them know of that open invite, and encourage them to make their way over to Into the Necrosphere. Friends, if you are new to the podcast and you like what you've heard so far, then make sure you check out my fellow horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse. We kick off your week on a Monday with another episode of Horror Wolf 666, brought to you by Brandon Legion. On a Tuesday, of course, there's yours truly with Into the Necrosphere. On a Wednesday, we got your first double shot of the week. It starts with Everything Went Black, hosted by Mike Hill of the band Tombs. We also have Iblis Manifestations, brought to you by Cheyenne from the band Trivax. I am currently wearing a very snappy-looking Iblis Manifestations t-shirt. Cheyenne has just launched some Iblis merch, so check them out. I think if you find Iblis on the socials, there should be a link for you to buy t-shirts on there. On a Thursday, we have the return of Mike Hill, and he is joined by his co-hosts, the outlaw Mike Scondotto and the Professor Jeff Kashid, for Necromaniacs, one of my very favorite podcasts of the week, the best way to get your weekend started. And on a Thursday and again on a Sunday, we also have the sinister minister Carl Haikara and his podcast Soul Knox. He takes you on a curated journey through the dark, the weird, the arcane, and the esoteric. On the topic of curated journeys, I'm going to be taking you on one through Metal Storm at the end of this podcast. So once I'm done talking to the Mikes Hill and Scondotto, don't go anywhere, because we're going to be listening to brand new songs by Grand Cadaver, Malthusian, the Acacia Strain, Der Weg einer Freiheit, Car Bomb, Amon Amarth, yes, even Amon Amarth, and much, much more. That's coming your way later on in the show. Right now, though, please welcome back to the podcast Mike Hill and Mike Scondotto as we count down our favorite thrash albums of the 80s. Obviously, there's been, multiple diary clashes. It's difficult getting everybody's time aligned. But also partly when we first suggested this, when we did the last 666 countdown, I thought, in the back of my mind, I was like, this is going to be a fucking breeze. And then you start going through the albums and you like, oh, this album, oh, Jesus, this reminds me of that record or that record. And suddenly I realized this is probably harder than any of the others that we did, the death metal or the black metal.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my honorable mentions is ridiculous. And it was very hard to pick a sixth favorite from the 80s that eliminates the big four. But yeah. I'm glad we eliminated the big four because we could give some of these other guys, a chance to shine, which we don't always see on these thrash metal lists, huh?
Well, that was my thinking, so just to, for anybody that's not been following the intent here, 666 countdown, we're going to be picking our favorite thrash or crossover albums. The rules are, must be released between 1980 and 1989, must adhere to the Metal Archives rule. So it must, if you go into Metal Archives, you look the band up, it has to say thrash or crossover. And it cannot include a record by the Big Four. you can also not have duplicates. So you can't have 6, I don't know, the 3 Testament albums and 3 Sepultura albums or something. Must be a different band. I mean, 100% part of the thinking with removing the big 4 was, I don't want us to be a debate about which is the better record. Fucking Show No Mercy or Master of Puppets, because that's what we would all get into, and maybe we can at the end say what our favorite big 4 record is. I think people can probably guess mine, but this is such a deep genre, way deeper than people give it credit for, because they always look against the big 4, and hopefully people are going to discover a couple of gems today that they didn't know about before.
Yeah, I agree. I was kind of dreading it, honestly, because I knew there was I'm like, oh, I got to get into this. And then you start listening to the records and you're like, oh man, well, what about this one? What about this one? And I feel pretty good about my selections, but my mentions are insane. Like I have more than, it mentions.
My number 1 was literally decided on Thursday morning. And it may relate to an exchange that we had on Messenger, but we'll get to that.
Oh no!
Very quickly, just because you guys haven't been on the show for a while, let's just get folks up to speed with what's been going on in your lives. I want to, I have congratulated you offline and separately, but Mike, just to congratulate you on your nuptials. Very big leap that you've taken forward. Becoming an adult now, becoming a man. So
finally grew up, man.
I was, of course, deeply offended that I wasn't asked to officiate the wedding, but I'll get over it in time. But no, seriously, big congratulations. But you've got a lot going on at the moment. Do you just want to give people a primer on what's been happening?
Well, getting married is a big thing in my life, so that's good. And looking to buy some property in the Hudson Valley. As a matter of fact, when we're done here, we're driving over, about an hour and a half away to look at a couple of houses. We're going to be entering the PR phase for the new Tombs record, which will be out in October 17th. We did a bunch of press photos recently, so got to update that. And we're going to start seeing word about the record, like ads, and then eventually reviews and stuff like that, and some news about shows and that sort of stuff is going to be coming up in the next few months.
Awesome.
Well, I will say, without giving anything away, because I think we should definitely do another episode nearer the release of the record. I have mentioned this before on the album, but my personal view is probably the best Tombs album ever. I'm a massive fan of the Grand Annihilation, and I feel like this is the Grand Annihilation as you really wanted to make it. That's my read on the record. I think it's phenomenal.
Thank you very much. And you're I wouldn't say that was an intentional thing, but as I listen back to it, I kind of hear, I could see why you would say that, because there's a lot of ideas that weren't, maybe they were kind of half baked maybe when we recorded that album, and now years later, it's easier to look back and see where we might have went wrong on certain things and correct those those issues. And it's just 5 or 6 years of practicing and growing as a musician that kind of helped sort of realize that stuff.
Well, in case anybody from Decibel is listening and they start putting their best of list together in August, hold off, because there's a lot of good stuff coming out, and Tombs are going to be one of them. I mean, that is definitely going to be one of the best records of the year. No question.
I like it. That's
I'm fond of it.
Sometimes that's enough. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, it's July. Decibel's already started. So
they're probably going to publish it next month.
The article's already written.
Coming out next week.
Outlaw Scondotto, anything new to report on your end?
Yeah. My band Inhuman played a really good show a couple of weeks ago. It was our first show in about 2 years, which was fun. It was for a friend of Mike Hill and I's that passed earlier in the year. Rich Hall, who was a big promoter of shows for a while. He booked at CBGB's. He booked kind of, all over New York, and then he moved to the West Coast and had a family, and he tragically passed away in the winter of this year. And there was 2 really big shows for him where all the proceeds went to his wife and kid, and we got to play with Converge and Cave In and Today Is the Day, and my brother Mark's band shut down, and it was, this kind of all-day show that was a lot of fun. And one of the really good things that sprung from it is that Inhuman's going to do more, and we're going to write a new EP, it's looking like. So, yeah,
awesome.
The new activity in the Inhuman camp, which makes me very happy as my 30-year baby come this fall. So, yeah, looking forward to that for sure.
Badass. All right, well, gentlemen, let's begin the countdown. We will go as a token wedding gift of sorts. We'll have Mike Hill go first.
Mm-hmm.
So give us your number 6.
All right. After much meditation on this list, my number 6 is Retaliation by Carnivore, 1987. And I know you guys are all Pete Steele fans. That record, pretty much encapsulates the brutality and visceral intent of a band with that hint of dark irony that would be further realized in Typo Negative. So that's my number 6. It was actually further up on the list, but I had to bump it down a little bit.
I did say there was going to be some parallels and some similarities on our list. I'm not going to reveal where Carnivore sits on mine, but I will say this was another one of those toss-ups where I went back and I listened to the first record and I listened to Retaliation, and it was touch and go as to which one was going to make the list. I love the first record, but what I would say is I think Retaliation is such a leap forward. It's also an early indication of what Typo Negative would I was about to say grow up to be, but what it would essentially evolve into. And I am the biggest Typo Negative mark under the sun. So those Typo Negative hints on Retaliation make the album for me, but it's just so full of sarcasm, machismo. It's like, in some ways it's almost Pete Steele being a professional wrestling character for an entire record. It's fantastic, and it's so unique. To this day, nothing sounds like it. Nothing ever will sound like it. But when I included this, I was actually thinking, Outlaw Scondotto, you must have a perspective on Carnivore because you were around that scene in the early days.
I got into them in high school, freshman or sophomore year, and they had broken up by the time I found them, so to speak. In like '88, they were actually kind of done. They did what they would call reunion shows. It was kind of weird, their trajectory. But I did get to see, obviously, I've told this story a bunch. I was at Repulsion's first show, right, which was in 1990, March of 1990, who went on to be Typo Negative. And at that show, they did Race War, and they did Jesus Hitler, and I think they might have did maybe one other Carnivore song, and then they did all these new, weird songs that me and my friends referred to as these really weird songs, which were Typo Negative songs. But then, that's March of 90. In October of 90, they did a reunion show, Carnivore. And that was actually the first time I finally got to see them live. And that was fucking bonkers. I'll never forget, Pete Steele says to the crowd, he has this like bucket of blood on stage, and he kind of tosses some out and goes, "Hey, here's some AIDS blood for you." And I was just like, "Oh my!" It was just, like you're a teenager and you're just kind of, wow, your mind is kind of blown. But yeah, I mean, they were the big looming presence. You know what I'm saying? They were the band that everybody kind of wanted to be. And of course, once Typo started rolling and just getting bigger and bigger, and it was just, they were pretty much inspirational to everybody, and it was such a cool time.
Typo, obviously, as I said, I'm a massive fan of them. But again, Carnivore is such it's such an anomaly of a band because no one was doing anything like it. And even if you think that this was done in 1986, you kind of go back and you think, well, who was his influences? And there's I think he had a very broad, Pete Steele had a very broad taste in music, so I think he was drawing from a lot of different areas, but just the way that he melded all of that together in the sound that would eventually become Carnivore blows my mind. I mean, the guy I've always said this. I think if he had gone on to, if he'd grown a little older, I think, he may have gotten, hopefully, his dues a bit more than he has. But I truly think he was one of the greatest musical geniuses that of our generation, no question. The thing that's also interesting to me about Retaliation in particular is I've spoken to so many people on this podcast. I've seen so many interviews with so many guys, whether it's guys from the most grim black metal, the most brutal death metal. I've seen Greg McIntosh from Paradise Lost and Strigoi. So many people tip the hat to Carnivore from so many different stripes within the metal scene.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I know the guys from Crowbar also huge fans of Carnivore and Typo. Yeah, I mean they left their mark, But what's funny is that they weren't a big band in their actual time. They weren't that big. And they barely left the tri-state. So that's the really funny part about Typo Negative, I mean about Carnivore, excuse me. But they put out the 2 records. They played New York, New Jersey, maybe Connecticut, Brooklyn, Staten Island. But yeah, Pete didn't want to be a rock star at that point. He just kind of, wanted to keep things kind of local. And obviously the bigger Typo got, the bigger Carnivore got. So yeah.
I know that you're friends with Kenny Hickey, but did you ever get to meet Pete?
Yeah, well, Confusion, my old band in the 90s, played a 1994 Carnivore reunion, which was really awesome at the infamous Lemoore. So yeah, I met him a few times. I didn't know him though. I will say I met him. What's up? How you doing? Shake a hand. Didn't know him, but I met him a bunch, and he was always nice when I met him.
I had an incredible experience related to Kenny Hickey. Very shortly after Pete died, Seventh Void opened for Monster Magnet at the Electric Ballroom in Camden. And right at the end of the Seventh Void show, they I can't remember which Seventh Void song they did, but they went into the last bars of World Coming Down. And Kenny is standing there like, belting it out, singing, I know my world's coming down, and tears streaming, down his face. And he looked down at me, and, you could see I was like singing along as well. And he kind of just like nodded his head. Fucking, I mean, that was, I'll always remember that. And I always get goosebumps anytime I think about it. But it was such because I don't think I've ever been, I generally when famous people pass away, you're sad, but at the same time, it's not the end of the world. It's not someone that you knew. But Typo Pete Steele, when he passed away, I was genuinely miserable about it.
Yeah, I mean, Mike and I had been friends for about 4 years in 2010 when Pete died, and I remember getting that text from my bassist in Inhuman, Hank, who was in Seventh Void and Silver Tomb, and I was just like floored, man. I just couldn't believe it,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember getting that news. I think we were on tour actually when I got the news about Pete Steele, because there was a false flag, remember the false flag that Pete killed himself
in 2005. They put up on their website or something, 05 or 06, that the RIP, whatever. He just, did it as
he did that. They put that on the website, and the tombstone read "Finally Free," which I mean is so fucking typical Pete Steele. I thought it was hysterical. But that was for "Life Is Killing Me," right?
No, that was because "Life Is Killing Me" is 03. They just did that in 05 to fuck with people, probably. Yeah, he probably just did that for the hell of it.
Yeah. And initially I thought it was. I didn't believe it at first, to be honest. I was like, oh, this must be another, stunt or something like that. But then it was confirmed that he actually had passed away, and I was like, damn, that's heavy,
Yeah. Well, you've started us off on a very high note, Mike Hill. So, Mike Scondotto, over to you for your number 6.
Okay, DRI's 1989 opus Thrash Zone on Restless Records. I think I even got the release date here. It was released October 10th, 1989. Big Headbangers Ball record. I was late to the party with DRI because, when I was like 14, 15, the guys that got me into hardcore music were New York hardcore snobs. and DRI was probably a shit metal band at that point. So by the time I'm like, you know what, I'm gonna fucking check out DRI, I find Thrash Zone first, and I fell in love with it. And the Beneath the Wheel video and just the vibe of the record, something about it. You know, the cover's a little goofy, but I love the cover. Like it's just something very nostalgic about it for me now. Reminds me of, you know, sophomore, junior years in high school. It's a really good record. I actually think it's one of their best records, honestly. And there's a lot of really good songs on it. And as a thrash metal record, I mean, yeah, it's got its, you know, hardcore, whatever. It's a great thrash metal record. You guys fuck with DRI?
I definitely do, and I can reveal that on my short list for my list was Deal With It, Crossover, Four of a Kind, and Thrash Zone by DRI. So, you know what's crazy? Going back listening to those records, is it not that Municipal Waste basically has tried their very best to copy DRI for the entirety of their existence?
They don't have a career without. Look, this is not a diss. This is not a slight. There's like two bands they don't really have a career without, and DRI is one, and I would say Nuclear Assault is probably the second. I've heard a lot of riffs mined from those two bands in particular, maybe little violence riffs here and there too over the years, but yeah, DRI in particular is the band. If
there was a Municipal Waste pie, I think DRI makes up at least 85% of that.
Yeah, I mean, that's DRI, and that was the whole resurgence of thrash. Remember, like, you know, there was a period of time where there was no new thrash bands really, like in the early 2000s.
Yeah,
and like you know, Municipal Waste. Well, there was a couple of bands prior to that were on like that was it 625 Thrashcore or whatever that label. They put out like a bunch of. There's this one band that was like a Suicidal ripoff. I can't remember what they were called though, but it was kind of out of that West Coast like punk scene, really, you know. And then Municipal Waste is really what put that whole scene on the map with their, you know, revisitation of the DRI records, really, you know what I mean? And even the whole vibe, like that whole like fun pizza party like trip, you know, is like kind of they introduced that into the scene, and I think that is heavily something that DRI was responsible for. You know, I like some of their stuff, but I wouldn't consider myself a fan of DRI. Really.
Toxic Holocaust too, another band that definitely is a part of the thrash comeback back then, and then later on, a couple of years later, the first Power Trip record, you know, etc. Yeah,
Toxic Holocaust is pretty cool. We toured with them earlier on, and like they had like live, they almost had more like a Venom kind of thing going on, because initially the
Black
record,
Thrash,
the records, I was like, oh, this will be cool to go out and tour with these guys, and then like the first show, I was like, this is more like Venom than like, you know, DRI, you know what I mean? So I don't know. I tip my hat to both of those bands, definitely, you know. And Toxic, you know.
On the topic of Power Trip, have you guys checked out Fugitive?
I like it. Yeah, I think it's really cool. I mean, it's got some thrash, it's got some death. It's cool, man. I dig it.
That new single they put out a couple of months ago, Spheres of Virulence, it's just so fucking hard. Like that is exactly the kind of thrash that I like. Must have a killer breakdown. You know, sick riffing, but just everything about it is just awesome. Like every element just works in lockstep.
They're like where there's no real death in Power Trip. Fugitive have that death metal in them, you know. Yeah. But I wonder, like, it must be hard because if they're doing Power Trip again and they're doing Fugitive, that must be difficult. Am I crazy there? I don't know.
No, I don't think so. I mean, there's also. There's actually similarities in sound between the two bands as well. Yes. Obviously now because they share a vocalist. I mean, personally, I don't really care if they're going to do both in tandem. Great, it means more good music.
It would be fun to see them together. Absolutely, yeah. But DRI, man, it could have been crossover, but I don't know. Like Thrash Zone for me just has a very special place in my heart.
Yeah. All right, my number 6, Dark Angel, Darkness Descends, released in 1986. featured Gene Hoglan when he was only 18 years old, which is mind-blowing because he set, I think, a bar for extreme metal drumming on that record that even to this day, yes, I mean, a lot of people have probably equaled it. He's topped it, but it is fucking insane. The whole album from beginning to end is one of the most intense things that I have ever heard in my entire life. It's just 35 minutes of pure violence. You get to the kind of 1 minute 50 mark on the burning of Sodom. And I was talking about breakdowns earlier. One of the sickest breakdowns designed for just pure bone-breaking mosh pit violence. It's one of those albums where there's some records you listen to and it kind of feels like you're in the middle of the pit when you're listening to it. And for me, Darkness Descends is absolutely one of those records, one of the best examples of those types of albums.
It is a fucking awesome record. I think it's their best work, you know. I mean, I don't think they have any bad records or anything, but there is something about that record. It's got a cool, very dark vibe. It's funny. A lot of older death metal guys have said that like there's moments on there that like maybe not straight death metal, but are just very dark. You know what I'm saying? And kind of maybe influence some of the death metal bands at that point. But yeah, I mean that's a great pick, Jackie.
You're gonna hear about Darkness Descends later on. For sure, man. It's
actually Sorry, you're gonna say?
No, there's two records on my list that are like kind of like I've always looked at them as kind of like, you know, connected, like brother records in some ways because of just what I perceive as being the influence on like stuff that came out later. You know,
I do agree with you, by the way. Outlaw Scondotto, that this record is so heavy it verges on death metal on quite a few occasions. And again, I think probably if you were to have some sort of measure of heaviness, it's maybe in the top 5 heaviest thrash albums ever. Pure thrash I think is phenomenal. And legend has it that apparently Gene at the ripe old age of 18 was also kicked out of the studio at one point because he was harassing Don Doty about his vocal performance and saying he needs to get fucking heavier. Wow. Which just made me like Gene Hoglan even more when I read that. So and the end result speaks for itself.
That's awesome.
All right, Mike Hill, your number 5.
So my number 5, like the next two for me are like I guess kind of related. So I got 7 Churches by Possessed, you know, and that's like 1985. My introduction to this record was like coming out of listening to Venom and like Bathory and stuff like that. This record looked great. It had an upside down cross on it. There's a song in there called Evil Warriors, and so it was like. There was no doubt in my mind that I was going to buy this record and listen to it. So, but I had actually heard this on a college radio station when it came out, and it was like it fit very nicely into that. It was thrash, but it had just like kind of almost like I didn't even know what black metal was at the time, but like coming off of listening to like Venom and stuff like that, it had that sort of feel to it, which is why I gravitated towards it. And then that would become influential on like black metal, death metal bands, you know, solid album.
So this is going to open up an entire can of worms by you putting this record in this list. So what you're saying is you, like most people in the world, weren't calling this album death metal either, Michael? Is that what you're...
Well, I'm not calling it death metal just because there was, at 1985, there was no death metal.
Yes! Okay, you know I mean? That's my sarcastic point.
Yeah, but it's like, I mean, you can't... I think I mentioned though in my little spiel about how this would go on to influence death and black metal, this record.
Agree 100%. But what's funny is that you, like my buddies older than me who got to see Possessed and bought the record when it came out, were all calling this a thrash record.
Yeah, because the term death metal didn't exist in 1985.
Well, the term exactly was derived from the record.
Yeah,
because the last song on the record is called death metal. I mean,
there you go.
It's my understanding that's where the term basically came from.
But the thing is, a lot of people now I feel like have rewritten history and said that this you know, they were always calling themselves death metal, and it's like I don't think they were.
So.
I don't think they were.
If you picked up like Rip magazine or something, or Hit Parader or whatever, you know, they would refer you. There would be an article on thrash, and they would be in it. You know what I mean? So that's how I'm basing it on the historical like sort of vibe. You know,
I think it was again, like you said, after this record that things and that word and that term and that as a genre are established. And a lot of people say things like, well, that's why Scream Bloody Gore is one of the first death metal records and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But it is an interesting bone of contention. It causes a lot of fun YouTube and Facebook and Instagram comments. But I think it is not incorrect to include 7 churches on a thrash metal list, and it is not incorrect to include them on a death metal list.
But I mean, Scream Bloody Gore is like planting the flag. Like, boom, we got this new thing going on. You know, but you can also say like the early Necrophagia records were like death metal.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
They sound a lot like, you know, what I think they sound a lot like, well, another record that's on this is going to be on my list. I know
that's the thing. There are bands in that time frame playing death metal. Necrophagia is playing death metal. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Death is another one. There's a handful of Morbid Angels already out there playing death metal.
Play black metal. If you want to go one step
I mean,
those early Morbid records are black metal records.
But the thing is, it is funny though. Like, Jeff apparently from Possessed gets all very upset if 7 Churches is not referred to as the first death metal record, and I'm just like, okay, but. I don't know. It's a little weird.
Hey, that's not my problem, man.
That's right. That's not your problem.
No. Your number 5, Outlaw Scondotto.
All right. This is I'm
the side beforehand suggests controversy, but we'll see.
Okay. Well, my number 5 is Nuclear Assault's Game Over, October 7th, 1986. I fucking love this album. Thin guitar tone and all. I know some people, you know, are not big fans of the recording of this record. It doesn't fucking matter. I'm sorry. The music, the riffs, the songs are there. It is, hold on, my cat is trying to kill me right now. Sorry about that. Amy just bit my hand very hard. Maybe she's not a fan of Nuclear Assault. But yeah,
I don't agree with that. I didn't agree with that selection.
What a fucking cool record, man. I remember getting this record as a teenager. You know, the cool picture collage on the inside, the amazing Ed Repka artwork. I don't know. It's just something about this record. It's like a thrash metal fucking bonanza for me. You guys like this record?
Love it.
It almost made my list, definitely.
Okay.
Yeah.
It was in contention for me as well, and for me, Nuclear Assault is one of those bands that in the 80s went on a three album tear. That was absolutely. I mean, because I think Game Over, Survive, and Handled with Care are all excellent.
The Plague EP's recording is obviously better than Game Over's recording, but that EP is fucking insane.
Yeah.
But yeah, Game Over is so fucking cool, man. And again, I hear a lot of them in Municipal Waste for sure. I definitely do. I got to see some of their, reunion shows over the years. I remember they played this 2002 CBGB show, and I dove off the stage like 4 times. I was like 29 years old. I've always tried to look for video of this show, but I've never found it. Yeah, just, I don't know, very nostalgic record. Fucking perfect, I think, as is.
Here's a question for you. How old were you when you did your last stage dive?
Oh, wow. I was in my 40s.
Yeah, me too,
proud to say. Geez. Somewhere between 44 and 46.
Can you remember the show?
No.
Oh, shit, dude.
I can't remember the show, but it was in my 40s. I definitely don't do that anymore. But yeah.
Mike Hill?
53, man. I was just a couple years ago. I stage dove when we were on tour at Origin. The last show. we played a show in Lawrence, Kansas, where that was their hometown, and I jumped up on stage and I sang. I forgot what song it was. It was like I think it was the Motorhead cover, "Killed by Death." I was up there and I jumped off the stage.
Why can I not picture Origin doing "Killed by Death"?
Well, no, it was like it was like a combo Tombs Origin collaborative set type.
Nice,
thing. Like
nice.
as like an encore, we did "Killed by Death" and like another. I forgot what the other track was. And we had like Justin played drums, and it was his birthday, and like I sang, I played guitar, that kind of stuff. Kaiser sang, and that was it. I got inspired and I jumped off the stage.
That's cool. Oh wait, Jackie, I did a bit of a dive at a Killing Time show 5 years ago, 6 years ago. So that might have been the last one.
I'm lagging behind you guys. The last time that I was in a pit, I didn't even stage dive. That was Biohazard 2015. That was the last time that I mixed it up. But yeah, feels like I'm gonna have to do at least one between the age of 45 and 50.
We got
just so I don't fall behind you guys.
You got time.
All right, my number 5, SOD, Speak English or Die. Released in 1985. I have flippantly in the past said it's my favorite thrash album. I think the deep dive probably made me recalibrate that a little bit, but recalibration aside, it's a fucking masterpiece. Recorded over 3 days, every single song, especially the kind of first 3/4 of the record is just total fire from beginning to end. Billy Milano sounds awesome. And as much as I've spoken about Metallica being, for me, in the early 90s, the benchmark of what a great live band should be, SOD live at the Budokan, if you see that video, that was probably one of the things that left the biggest impression on me in terms of the level of intensity and manliness that I require when I go to a show. I thought Billy Milano on that show was just astonishing.
I love SOD. They didn't make my list. They may make an appearance elsewhere, but that is a great record. I'm also a big mark for the first MOD record, which I think is really, really good. Got to see SOD live, not in the 80s, but like in like the, Bigger Than the Devil kind of era, whatever, and maybe again a little later. Always fucking awesome. And of course, the 2025 Billy Milano interview is probably one of my favorite things of the year. So yeah,
SOD were probably I might even have heard SOD before I heard Metallica actually. Because, no, I'm serious, dude. It's like, remember, this is the 1980s, right? Information was very sparse, especially on Metallica. They were an underground band back then. And a lot of the way I got into music was listening to that college radio station, and then friends, sharing cassettes with me, or recording a cassette off of someone's LP, or making a mixtape or that kind of thing. And I still have the cassette of Speak English or Die because someone gave it to me because he wasn't into it. He was like a punker sort of guy, and he was just like, I don't know, you might like this, check it out. And it was literally the first. I swear, I think I heard this before I heard like anything by Metallica. Nice. And it was like, oh my God, this is cool, and of course I was into it, and it's, that record definitely has a place in my iconography of 80s thrash for sure. Yeah.
It's just such a rebellious, don't give a fuck kind of album, and it manifests in everything from, I mean, you could kind of hear that it was recorded in 3 days because it has it's got a very kind of punk feel to it, but it's got hardcore sensibility to it. It's got thrash to it. It's yeah, like I said, phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. The reason why maybe it goes down the list a little bit for me is because some of the fucking around gets a bit annoying. When you've heard the joke once or twice, like, what is that noise? It's kind of like, well, yeah, I just skip past that now. So it's not, yeah. Later on the list, my number 1, I feel pretty strongly about. There's nothing to skip on that. If you skip anything, you're a poser. So that's kind of why it moved down the list, but definitely worthy of inclusion.
Inhuman, my band covered "Kill Yourself" a few times.
What a song!
Not an easy song to sing. it gets very, very it's fast. Like it's super fast versus like, you know. But it's
you can hear him run out of steam on Live at the Budokan when he's doing that. Like he doesn't really finish any of the lines.
Oh no.
He kind of like, you know, he sort of speed runs through it and then trails off and then catches his breath and then, you know, falls back in again.
Yes, and Pale Nazarene do a nice version of that as well.
Yeah, which is, I mean, that is the perfect song for them to cover. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, we move on to number 4, Mike Hill.
Number 4 is "Darkness Ascends" by Death Angel. That's that's like
Dark Angel.
Yeah, I was confused, and they're completely not even remotely the same band. Yeah. Sorry about that. Death Angel, of course. Darkness Descends. Dark Angel. Darkness Descends.
I thought you were being sarcastic when you said Death Angel.
No. It's like it's a slip of the tongue. I apologize. I'm sure I'm going to get like lacerated by you guys listening to this, but yeah, that's another. Once again, you know, the album cover. Like I said, you know, when in that period of time, man, you couldn't really hear music like this unless someone played it for you, or you're fortunate to have like a cool like college radio station that might have a metal show, which fortunately I was. They had a hardcore and punk station show, and then like on Friday nights late, like I think 11, they had like this underground metal show that I found out about most of the stuff I got into, and so it was all just vibes and like album cover, and you know, maybe someone told you about the band, and that's kind of how I got into, you know, Dark Angel. And yeah, it slotted right in there. It's a record that definitely, as well as Possessed, you know, it's like evil, you know, satanic sort of stuff. You can draw a direct line from like this record into like black and death metal, in my opinion.
Yeah, I would completely agree with that. And I was just going to say, we've spoken about this before on the podcast, but that discovery, was that not the most fun way to discover bands? When you stumbled onto something, it was like you discovered the secret to fucking enriching uranium or something like that. It was like, you know, there was such a sense of accomplishment when you found a band that none of your friends knew about, you heard, and you were like, this is fucking awesome. That magic, unfortunately, in the age of streaming is gone. And as much as I understand streaming as a necessary evil in 2025, but it's a shame to me that newer generations are never, ever going to be able to experience that joy of discovery. And I think because they won't experience that joy of discovery, I think that's one of the main reasons why they don't attach as much value to art as what people from our generation do.
I definitely agree with that, you know, and even more so from where I grew up. Like Mike grew up in an urban, you know, center. You know, I grew up in the suburbs, you know what I mean? And it's like there's even less people into what you're into out there. It was like just very, you know, generic, conservative, like middle of the road kind of, you know, place to grow up in. And then there'd be like 5 like reprobates that you knew you might have common interests with, and they were like usually like really, really like cool girls, you know what I mean, who are into stuff that you were down with, and then like just guys who like just got beat up all the time, and you know, like that kind of thing.
Yeah.
Like, and those were my friends basically, you know.
Yeah, for me, the whole thing, aside from, again, WSOU, Seton Hall, which is a big college radio station here in New Jersey, I found a lot of stuff from then. And then there was a Thursday night radio show called Crucial Chaos from at New York University, which was a hardcore show that I listened to every Thursday. But my whole journey really began with several kids from my neighborhood in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn, who got me into hardcore music and made me mixtapes and brought me to the Ritz and CBGB's. Like, and I think today, kids, while not finding it on the radio, they're stumbling across YouTube, and they are finding genres, they're finding old bands, they're finding music that way. And that's okay. You know, that's great, actually. It's weird. A part of the reason my old band from the 90s got to have a discography was because of YouTube, you could say. Young kids finding the band on YouTube. So, you know, it's not the same as our experience, but it is their experience. It's their unique experience for a younger kid.
Yeah, and that's fair. It's not really a perspective I thought about before, but that's and it's interesting, what happened with Confusion. Let me ask you this question before we move on to your number 4. What's your most memorable show that you ever saw at CBGB's?
Oh wow, the easiest answer. There's 2. One is January 1989. It was called the Roger Murray Benefit. Roger had some legal troubles, and they needed to raise money for, I don't know if it was for a lawyer or whatnot, or bail. Roger from Agnostic Front.
Yeah. And
it was a day of hardcore that was just out of control. It was like, Sick of It All and Killing Time. And there was a reunion of a band called Side by Side who had broken up. There was a Straight Ahead reunion. Like pretty much every single big New York hardcore band of the day played this particular show. Gorilla Biscuits, like it was just out of control, wall to wall packed. And then there was another benefit show in October of '88, a few months earlier. Pete from Sick of It All had some legal trouble, and that was called the Pete's Sake Benefit. And Straight Ahead reunited for the first time in over a year. And that was also insane. There are flyers for both of these shows out there. And it was just, again, two particular shows of just stacked lineups and a full to the brim house. And those are probably my 2 favorite hardcore shows. I would say another third favorite show was when Mayhem played there in 2000, I want to say. Seeing Mayhem at CBGB's was really cool. And a naughty band called Grand Belial's Key was the opening act on the show.
Oh God, you canceled now, mate. Can't have gone to that show.
What's funny? I mean, this was 2000. They weren't as cancelable in 2000, I guess you could say. But I got there just in time to see like the last. I missed them. Like I caught like their feedback basically. Like I missed seeing that band at CBGB's. But yeah, seeing Mayhem there was really awesome.
My question for you is: did you feel unsafe at the Grand Belial's Key show?
Not
because I would have felt in fear of my life. I
did not feel unsafe. There's a buddy of mine, Jamie Davis. Is a picture of me and him outside of at that show. But again, this was when they weren't the deal they have become now. I guess you could say
the hot potato that they've become now.
They were not the hot potato. No.
All right, your number 4.
My number 4, you're going to like this one, Jackie. A little band called Testament.
Ooh, okay.
The New Order, released May 10th, 1988 on Megaforce Atlantic Records. I think
just one quick thing before you go on. My number 4, Testament, the New Order.
Yes, that's right. Awesome. Okay, I was actually going back and forth between the New Order and Practice What You Preach. But I think, although some days I like Practice a little more, I think the New Order is the stronger record and has more bangers overall. I used to own an original vinyl press of this. I don't know what the fuck happened to it. Yeah, such a cool record. I like the recording on this record. I like the vibe. It has a great vibe. Like the album cover kind of matches the vibe. It's got that little hint of darkness. They're kind of a band on fire. The 3 in a row from the Legacy, the New Order, and Practice What You Preach is like 3 fucking very strong records, firing on all cylinders. Yeah, man. I mean, I saw them back in May of this year. They did Practice What You Preach in its entirety, and then did an entire other set of other songs. They did 2 full sets. They're not young men, and it was fucking fantastic. So what more can you say about Testament?
Well, I mean, they were definitely going to have to be on my list. I did it between the Legacy and New Order. I will say, just from the off, I don't really feel there's a Testament album that I dislike. There's some that I like more than others, but I was even on board for Demonic, which a lot of people didn't like. I think there's some great tracks on that record. Another thing just to point out about New Order, there's a lot of people talk about how young the Norwegian guys were when black metal was being created, but they overlook how young some of the musicians were in the heyday of thrash.
Yes.
We spoke about Gene Hoglan being 18 years old when Darkness Descends was recorded. Alex Skolnick was only 20 when he did the New Order. And if you listen to that and you listen to the musical capability that's on display on that record, especially as I went through all of these again in the run up to us recording this episode, it's mind blowing. It's absolutely fucking mind blowing.
Oh yeah. And speaking of age, I believe 2 members of Possessed were in high school when Seven Churches was recorded. So yeah, that is another thing. People forget about the all the West Coast thrash bands, how young they were. And you're right. The level of musicianship from such young dudes is really something, man. Absolutely.
And it's young dudes in an analog era, mostly analog era anyway, where, you had far less space to fuck up. You can look at like the making of Blessed Are the Sick as an example by Morbid Angel. It's all analog. So if you make a mistake, it's not as easy to rectify as it is nowadays. So for me, what Alex Skolnick did on the New Order is far more impressive than the myriad tech death that comes out today, which, on paper might seem a lot more complex and a lot more difficult, but it's something that can still be fixed, molded, shaped, whatever you want in the studio, at least as far as I'm concerned. So yeah, I absolutely adore this band. And just as one last comment on Testament and on the New Order, the first record that Chuck Billy contributed lyrics to, but is he not one of the greatest vocalists in any sphere of heavy music? And what blows my mind is how good he still sounds today. Like almost, Scondotto, you and I'll talk about the Black Sabbath show later on. But there's a lot of the old timers. Their voices, for obvious reasons, aren't as powerful as it once was. Chuck Billy sounds, I personally think, better than ever.
Yeah, he was very strong at the show. And Hill, I wanted to say, would you agree in the late 80s, it was far more difficult to be a guitarist and be on a record pre-digital than it is today? I mean, there was probably very little to no, quote, cheating back then with any kind of record. Yeah. Yeah.
Especially in thrash, you know what I mean? The right hand, that palm muting tightness, you can't fake that. That's especially then, you can't punch in like you can now with a Pro Tools session. You know what I mean? You can't mix and match, a reamp and do all this other crazy stuff. And then the solos too. It's these, like you were saying, these kids, or some of these guys are in their high school and they're playing on that level, this virtuoso level, rhythm and lead. And it's back then it was a real accomplishment to be in a band and make a record and do what these guys were doing. These days there's a lot of trickery that goes on. We cite the myriad of tech death bands where if you look at their Pro Tools session, it's tiny little cuts and it's a million different punch-ins to get those runs together. And back then it was way more of an accomplishment. I agree with that.
It sucks the soul from the music as well, I think. Jensen from The Haunted, when he was on Into the Necrosphere, he made a very interesting point to me. And I've spoken to people since that go, look, there's a utility to using click tracks. And I understand that. But what he said that was super interesting to me is he said when they stopped using click tracks because they wanted to give themselves the space to be able to, I guess, not improvise necessarily, but bring their own feel, their own flair to what they were playing. And I do think that makes a big difference.
Yeah, I mean, I live and die by a click track though, man, honestly, because it's more so with breaks, and actually in slower songs, the click track to me at least is more on, keeps you on point with the tempos, especially if there's a slow section of a song. When you're counting it out, it's harder to do that. And the drummer, that's when his or her, mainly his, tempos might slide a little bit, So I think it's in slower songs, that's more of a thing. And for me, when I write, all the stuff first. So I always have a click track running when I'm writing, and I think about, okay, this is like, 180 BPM, or this is 125, and then I just kind of like go from there,
Okay, well, let's move on to your number 3, Mike Hill.
My number 3 is Beneath the Remains by Sepultura, 1989. Just barely got in that era, that. Now I have to admit that I did not hear this record in real time. It was retroactively in the 90s that I got into this record, so it's a little bit of a cheat for me. I wasn't really aware of them until after 1990. But this record, raw as hell, spiritually kind of like in that same early, mid to early 80s like thrash vibe for me, and just like evil. It's a very evil sounding record, and that this record to me sounds, if you listen to early Necrophagia, I think this record and like the Schizophrenia record sound very similar to early Necrophagia, who are, I guess we're going to call them a death metal band.
Yeah, I mean, what's funny, this record's going to make quite an appearance for me soon. What's funny is that the sticker on it, I believe I think it said Brazilian death thrash or Brazilian death metal from the jungle or something like that. But their death metal days were way earlier. Sepultura, like this to me is largely a thrash record.
Yeah, definitely.
It's an evil thrash record. It's a dark thrash record. It's a hard thrash record.
Yeah.
I got to see them on this tour, their first tour of America. I got to see them at Lemoore, junior year of high school, man, 1989. Wow. Unbelievable. This band Faith or Fear opened up. I don't know if you guys remember, they had a record out. Also, it might have been on Roadrunner 2 back then. They're actually pretty good. A jam-packed Lemoore for a band's first tour ever of America, pre-internet, pre-any of that shit. Like the word had really spread on them like immediately. And that's one of my favorite shows ever, probably, seeing them in 1989. It was just fucking unreal, man. I think that set is on YouTube, actually. It's fucking insane.
I didn't see them until Chaos AD came out, honestly. I mean, I was like, I saw them on that tour with, I think Fudge Tunnel was the opener on that.
Yeah, I was at that. I was at that in New York, the Academy. The second time I saw them was 90 with Obituary at Lemoore. Oh my God. That was they were touring Cause of Death, and Sepultura was still touring Beneath because Arise hadn't come out yet. Ooh,
there is also that legendary Sepultura show on October the 15th, 1989 in London at the Marquee Club when they opened for Sodom. And there was I think with very little other than word of mouth, there was a line down the block that was close to half a mile before Sepultura were playing. Show was completely and utterly ran for Sepultura, and as soon as Sodom played, it dropped to about a quarter capacity and people left. So, wow. But I've spoken to one or two people who were there, and they said that it was one of the most incredible things. They to this day, it's left them speechless. But so Sepultura for me, unfortunately, when I was getting into them, I was in South Africa. There was no way I was going to see them, but they really were one of those. I don't know what the right word would be. Aspirational. They were just like they were a god tier band. Like that's what they were. I discovered them with Arise, and then worked my way back through Schizophrenia, Morbid Visions, Beneath the Remains, and then obviously subsequent to that, Chaos AD, etc. But Beneath the Remains, as a record in the Sepultura pantheon, kind of showed what they were able to do with a little bit of money behind them in a proper studio. Schizophrenia had been recorded in basically a studio that it was a shack. So it wasn't anything that approached a studio. If you listen to it today on decent headphones or a decent hi-fi, I actually listened to it the other day, and you may have listened to it a little bit more recently than that, but more on that later. But there are. It sounds like your equipment is defective. It is so poorly recorded. Whereas obviously with Beneath the Remains, it was Loctite, and I think the thing that shines through on this record as well, and obviously subsequently you see that at the shows, is just how hungry these guys were to prove themselves, and that's what endeared them to so many people, because they were by all accounts I mean, in terms of thrash, the heaviest thing on the face of the earth at the time that Beneath the Remains came out. They were not a band that should have gotten as big commercially as they became.
It's an interesting side note. I believe on Beneath the Remains that Max plays all the bass. And I believe he played all the bass on Schizophrenia too, because Paula was just not up to snuff on the recording side. He was good for live, but on the recording side, I believe Max played all of the bass tracks on that record, and the bass on that is fucking dope on Beneath the Remains.
Well, you are correct about that, by the way.
Oh wow.
Okay, Mike, it's over to you.
My number 3. Wow, here we go, guys. A band that has not made an appearance today. And it is New Jersey's own Overkill, Taking Over, March 1987, also on Megaforce Atlantic. This record, it sounds like a fucking fight, man. I fucking love Taking Over. It is just loaded with bangers and anthems. And I don't know. They get left out of a lot of thrash metal talks. I almost feel like sometimes, like it's Big Four, and then the immediate go-to is Exodus, and then the second go-to is Testament. And I just think Overkill are just as important as Anthrax. Definitely, I think in some ways better than Anthrax if you really want to get to the nitty-gritty. But yeah, I remember hearing this record probably in 87, freshman year of high school. And it's just something about it, man. Very like violent, pissed, aggressive. Their best record, I think, overall. Yeah. What do you think about Taking Over?
I got into them on the Years of Decay, and then again worked my way back. Love the record, but I was going to ask you your opinion on why you think they, as a band, especially in those early days, they never got their due. Now it feels to me like maybe people are waking up to them a little bit more. Probably not enough. But in the early days, they went on a 4-record streak in the 80s that is fantastic.
Very good.
Every single release is tier 1 material. But people didn't necessarily give them the time of day, and I think that's a shame.
Here's the thing: in the 80s they did great. They would fill up Lemoore every time they played. Lemoore held about 1,000 people back at that point. Lemoore had these little different iterations. This was a club in Brooklyn. To the listeners who don't know what I'm talking about, famous metal club. They had a rough go in the 90s. They really did. Then, I'd say in the last near 10 years, they have put out some very strong records, hard, like thrash metal records. And they actually did the Last King Diamond run. And they killed it and had a fantastic response. And it looked like tons of people were there for them too, So I think they're currently doing quite well. Metallica did those shows a year or two ago where they had certain bands play in the parking lot, depending on what city it was. And when they played Jersey, they had Overkill. You know what I'm saying? Like they're a part of the conversation. You know what I'm saying? Don't get me wrong. But I think they should be bigger overall. Yes. Why? I think some people are iffy on his vocals. I am not iffy on his vocals. I actually love his vocals. That could be the reason. What do you think?
Well, for me, that's the reason why I was never a massive fan of Overkill. So the vocals, were never really grabbed me. I mean, they're a great band. Like the music itself is sick. But like I have a tolerance. I like can't listen to an entire Overkill album. I guess. That's
a damn shame.
It's just my personal
preference. Yes.
Nah, man, they're just overshadowed, I guess,
All right. My number 3, Carnivore, Retaliation. Spoke about this already. Just as some supplementary information, let me say my favorite song of Retaliation is Sex and Violence. Favorite song of Carnivore is Male Supremacy. But, I mean, there aren't poor songs on either record, as far as I'm concerned.
Would you guys say that the debut is more? Well, it's more the thrash record proper, and the second record is more the crossover record that a lot of the time just veers off into a hardcore record.
100%.
Yeah, definitely more crossover on Retaliation.
Yeah. I was going to say this earlier. I mean, what really happens in between the two records is Pete Steele starts hanging out at CBGB's a lot, and that spills over into Carnivore. And he writes most of the lyrics for the second Agnostic Front record, and Louis plays drums on that record. Like that's like a lot happens, in that time period. And Pete becomes enamored with the world of hardcore. And I think the first record is coming more from a place of Venom, Motorhead, Manowar, and Black Sabbath, right?
That's Celtic Frost too, definitely.
Yes, right. That's like the first record, and then the second record is like Agnostic Front. Is seeping in there, and the other hardcore bands of the day are for sure, and it's not many bands have that kind of story. You know what I'm saying? Where they find another kind of genre and add it in, and it's like a bonus. Obviously there were times where certain thrash bands found funk or something and it killed the band. Like Carnivore found the hardcore scene and it added to the band.
Like Death Angel.
Yes, right. Well, yeah. But what's funny is I actually like Act 3 a lot, even though it has the funk exactly. But it's just an interesting story.
That should be another 666 best funk metal record.
Yes. Mordred. Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Just a comment on the Celtic Frost influence. I mean, it's never really spoken of as much with Pete Steele and Typo Negative, but that was something that actually carried through the entire, I would argue, with the exception maybe of October Rust, the entire Typo Negative catalog. You can hear it very, very clearly on the track "The Prophet of Doom" on Dead Again. It was never something that they kind of went away from, but just thought I would just make that as a side comment.
Yeah,
as I said, I mean, I am the biggest mark for Typo Negative generally that I know. So, okay, on to the we're at the business end of things now. So on to number 2, Mike Hill.
2 Megatherion by Celtic Frost. There, I fucking said it, man.
You're putting it in the thrash list. Interesting.
That's a big shout.
Not incorrect.
The last of these, my last 2, dude, I'm just doing what I feel, man. You know what I mean? It's like I always end up with these like unpopular selections for things. You know what I mean? But it's just this is how I am. This is what I am. Sorry. You
do actually check out though, because it does meet the as anybody who's shaking their fist at the screen or at their phones may just to correct them, it does check out.
Yeah,
according to Metal Archives, early Celtic Frost is thrash,
and people would probably identifying that band in that year in that time as thrash metal.
Well, that's what I'm getting at. Is like, all right, cool. If you're 25, or 30, and you think you know what's going on from the 80s, you don't, because I was there and I bought this record and I enjoyed this band alongside, Dark Angel and
Death Angel.
Death. Well, that's my favorite funk metal band. So that fits for me. You know what I'm trying to say? And like that record really, kind of hit on a lot of things. Like, for example, my favorite Metallica album is A Justice for All, because it has this kind of like grandiose like vibe to it, and then I think later in life, the fact that I got into bands like Neurosis and whatnot is because I liked this type of stuff. You know what I mean? Like the Celtic Frost, 2 Megatherion, this kind of higher, like they were definitely punching out of their weight class. Like they were trying to do things that they weren't necessarily technically able to do at the time but the concepts I thought were like really cool. So yeah, I mean that's I'd still listen. I listened to that record in addition to this preparation. I love that album.
Yeah,
great album. The most enduring memory for me of the record is that the album cover was usually near the top of the list alongside Merciful Fate's Don't Break the Oath in the many books and pamphlets distributed around my school about satanic rock
Yeah,
music.
man.
Great cover art as well.
Oh,
Frost are the band that one of the few and a handful of bands that has a direct line to thrash, death, and black metal, like straight up. Like there's absolutely, in my opinion, which makes them so hard to categorize on their own, right? Like it's, you ask 10 people what they are, you may get like, 8 different genres of.
Well, yeah, I mean that fortifies what I said. Are they a black metal band? No, not really. Are they a death metal band? No, not really. Are they a thrash band? That I think that actually fits closer to what they are. And they have thrash beats in some of their songs. And the album cover also too. Honestly, Jackie, you were talking about the Giger album cover is what grabbed me too, because I was like, this is the whole era for me that I was like into like, Alien and, Giger's artwork and all that kind of stuff. And that Tom Fisher and Giger had this like long relationship. There's like that Iceman with the Giger graphics on it, which I actually own a copy of one of those. I have that Iceman in my guitar collection. So I searched high and low for it, man, but I got one. So
I remember when you got it.
Yeah, never played. I played it once live, but like it's in my collection here.
Great selection. It's interesting to see where Tom went musically. I mean, I'm a very, very big fan of Triptykon. But I mean, he definitely he went down a far, far darker path as his music progressed, with the exception of Cold Lake. But I loved where he was going with Triptykon. I thought Milana Kasmata was a masterpiece.
Yeah.
Just wish he wouldn't keep us waiting so goddamn long to put out something new.
You almost forget about it, the band existing, and then something comes out. But you were talking about how Pete Steele and like Type O and Celtic Frost, it's like there's the typical Celtic Frost song, which definitely played a part in Carnivore and Type O Negative with their more like, faster songs, right? But the more like out there kind of experimental tracks by Type O, I think kind of like they definitely, I feel like in general have taken an influence from the Frost stuff that gets experimental too, which is what starts on Megatherion. They start getting a little bit more experimental,
Cold Lake, as a guy who enjoys his hair metal myself, is actually quite a good hair metal record with the darkest tone and like darkest riffing. That it's like I've never heard a record like that before. Like there's no such thing as a dark hair metal record.
No,
right? Like
no, maybe LA Gun.
There is one, and it's called Cold Lake. It's very interesting.
We oftentimes listen to Cold Lake in the van, dude. Honestly,
it's not a bad record.
Long drive. You may check in and see us listening to that at some point.
Yes. Jackie looks like he's going to explode.
No, not at all. Actually, to be honest with you, a friend of mine, as a joke, sent me Cherry Orchards the other day. And even though the video is atrocious, I was listening to the song and I was like, it's actually not terrible. I don't know why people hate on it so much. What I was going to actually say is I appreciated you guys saying the other day on Necromaniacs that Wasp isn't a hair metal band.
No,
absolutely
they
not,
are
man.
fucking genius, though. Absolute genius. Okay, Scondotto, you're number 2.
Another band that has not made an appearance today. Creators Extreme Aggression, June 19th, 1989 on Epic Records. Wow. This is my favorite Creator record. And it's all to the fault of my good buddy Rich O'Brien from the band Dark Side. When I get into hardcore, I spent about a year hating anything that wasn't hardcore. Okay. A good solid year of militant, young, douchebaggery, snobby, hardcore kid, right? Hating metal too, by the way. Okay. Even though I was a metalhead before. He goes, you need to hear Creator. And I went, okay, make me a tape of Creator. And it's kind of like a mix of certain songs. And this is actually a little bit before Extreme Aggression comes out. And he goes, nah, it's really fucking hard. And we judge things on if you could mosh to them at that point. Okay. And he said, yeah, I know you like mosh parts or whatever, dance parts. That's how we talked. And as the young kids today say, breakdowns, okay? And I immediately liked it a lot. And this is around the time of Beneath the Remains and Extreme Aggression. And I kind of rediscover South of Heaven that I cast aside because it came out at a time when I just wanted to hear Sick of It All and Youth of Today all day long. So, yeah, it was a very transformative kind of record for me. And the way it just starts out with that fucking scream and the riffing. And it is, to me, one of the heaviest, most brutal major label records, Creator's Extreme Aggression. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, Creator, awesome, man. I mean, another band that was, you can draw parallel, lines directly from them to like black metal. I feel like Creator was a huge influence on early black metal,
yes,
and death metal too.
Mm-hmm.
I was just about to say, there's barely an old head in death metal that, when asked what you listened to that inspired you to start a band, they don't cite Creator and Possessed.
Of course,
but Creator is always there. And I'd say maybe not Extreme Aggression so much, because many of those bands had already started by that point. Pleasure to Kill is the album that is cited, but Creator are the band.
Yeah, I mean, actually, Terrible Certainty. There's the hardcore metal band from Brooklyn, Marauder. Like, if you listen to the early Marauder demos, it sounds a lot like Creator. It sounds a lot like the Terrible Certainty record. A lot of it, because Saab and those guys loved Creator. We all loved Creator.
I mean, real quick about Marauder. I mean, I love Marauder, but they are barely a hardcore band, dude.
Right.
I'm a fan. Like, I'm a fan of all their records.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? It's like, yeah, if you look at the right angle, it's
right. They loved Creator, Sepultura, and Slayer alongside their Cro-Mags. But their biggest metal influences, especially in their formative days, when I was going to the rehearsals, Creator, Sepultura, Slayer, like the trinity of what they loved. But yeah, it's a vibe. Like, the 80s, mid to late 80s up to Coma of Souls, Creator is chef's kiss, as they say.
All right. Now, I did say to you guys on Messenger that I was going to throw something in that I think is going to come as a surprise.
Mm-hmm.
It surprised me, to be honest with you, because I, again, went through a bunch of stuff, and then suddenly this came up on of all things, a YouTube suggestion. Went back, listened to it. I was like, holy fuck, I forgot how brilliant this is. My number 2, None Shall Defy by Infernal Majesty.
Oh, okay.
Released in September 1987 on Roadrunner Records, a band who, when they started, they were from Toronto, Canada, very openly proclaimed that they were going to knock Slayer off their throne. Obviously never did. But if you go back and you listen to None Shall Defy, I think one of the greatest examples of black and thrash from the 80s on that record. Don't be put off by the album cover. The album cover looks like a fucking skateboard sticker from the 1980s. It looks a little bit like Grind King Trucks, like the mascot from Grind King Trucks. It's awful. I don't know who did that for them. It's atrocious. But it should not take away from just how exceptionally good the music is, how fucking aggressive, how dark, and also a band that were very overtly satanic. Insofar as they had a song, the 4th track on None Shall Defy is called SOS, Satan Our Savior.
Okay, I need to really fuck with that band more, because one of my favorite black metal bands of all time, Dawn, covered them on one of their EPs. They covered the song Night of the Living Dead, which is a great song. And they obviously love Infernal Majesty. They're from Sweden. That record has come up a bunch, I feel like, over the years in conversations, and people kind of just name dropping them as, holy shit, people need to really hear this record and check this band out. It definitely has its fans, but now that you have placed them so high, I am definitely going to potentially throw that on later today.
Well, part of what got me keen on them as well is I had been as everyone knows, through sheer will and black magic, the Daiva debut record, I'm just completely obsessed with that album. And I was going back looking for stuff that sounded like this, specifically from the 80s. Infernal Majesty was one of the ones that came up. It's a 10 out of 10 masterpiece. 96% on Metal Archives. How more people don't talk about this, I don't know. But now that you've been told, definitely check it out.
Nice.
Yeah, I need to check it out too, because I'm only like, I may have even listened to them only once or twice in my life, man. I got to check it out.
I mean, I don't think the album cover helped. That's for goddamn sure. They had the dude that did the album cover for South of Heaven, and he did something gnarly for them. They could have been a massive band, but sadly that was not to be. But musically, it's no getting away from it. It's edgy, it's dark, it's menacing, it's fucking aggressive. It's just everything I love about thrash. All right, now here's a suggestion. Before we do our number ones, let's just do a quick round table. Do our number one by a big four band.
Ooh, okay. All right. So for me, it's Seasons in the Abyss by Slayer. That's about, yeah. Okay. Just one? You want it or you want it?
I think just one.
Right, yeah. Okay.
Seasons in the Abyss by Slayer. Scondotto?
It's Rain and Blood. Slayer. Number one.
Show No Mercy, Slayer.
Oh, okay. That's my second favorite Slayer record. Show No Mercy.
Yeah, interesting that all three of us picked Slayer, and this is kind of the point, right? We were going to end up. I thought we would all align on that, but regardless, we were going to end up talking just about how great Slayer is. Yeah, and we kept the big four in the if they were up for grabs in the rules of the game. But anyway, right, your number one, Mike Hill.
Once again, I know I'm a hipster, poser sort of metal guy. So my number one is Dimension Hate Ross by Voivod, 1988.
Wow.
Yep.
I don't think that's I wouldn't call that hipster or poser at all, mate. That's a great record.
Dude, it's like I love Voivod. That's why they're my number one record. It's like one of my favorite bands. And that record really, even just on like a playing level, like turned me around to like a different way of playing guitar. Really, it's I think groundbreaking. I mean, I actually couldn't decide which Voivod record to pick, and I think Hate Ross was the one that I picked because that one had the biggest, most profound like influence on me. You know what I mean, as a player.
I got to tell you, Voivod almost made my list, but it was going to be Nothing Face because in my I Don't Hate Metal Anymore late summer 1989, I bought Nothing Face and it blew me the fuck away. Like I worked backwards. So, that's why that one is like my number one. I was a bass player back then and I was like obsessed with the bass
dude, bass playing is insane, man. Yeah. I mean, even like Phobos, which came out in the 90s, is like a great album. A different singer, but they still make great music.
You talk about influential though, again, they're one of those bands that sit right there with Creator in terms of all of the elite will reference them, and whether it's Killing Technology or Dimension Hate Ross, like most bands that are worth anything. And I've had direct conversations with Jason from Akercocke about this, for example. Like they all fucking adore this band. Nate Bomb Death, talk to Shane Embry. One of the first bands he names, not called Killing Joke, is Voivod. Their span of influence reaches very, very far, a lot further than probably most people realize, into the extreme metal scene across the entire spectrum.
But it's interesting that you mentioned Killing Joke too, because that it's almost like that period of Voivod, the Nothing Face, Hate Ross, era.
Yep.
I felt in some ways, even at that time, because I was at that period of time, I was in college and I was listening to like, Killing Joke, bands like that in some ways I feel like they were even referencing some of that stuff too on these records.
Yeah.
It was like this real edgy like guitar playing and not your typical thrash kind of sound.
Like they were metalheads from Canada playing metal, but they liked a lot more than metal.
Yeah, exactly.
And they definitely liked Killing Joke, and they liked industrial, and they liked other shit, and it seeped into the sound. And I think they're like 4 LP 80s run is fucking insane. Absolutely.
Yeah. No, totally. Yeah, definitely. And and they're also the huge, King Crimson, like especially that record Red by King Crimson. It sounds exactly like Voivod, if you ask me.
By process of elimination, I can guess your number one, Mike Scondotto, but I'm gonna let you say it.
It's Beneath the Remains by a little band called Sepultura. It almost was Creator, actually. It was like a toss-up. Yeah, such a great record, man. I mean, inspirational. It's nostalgic, but it's also timeless. Seeing Max from the stage sing those songs when I was in high school, Mass Hypnosis,
Yeah, I'll never forget that on Under Siege is what you heard.
Yes,
that the first time.
Hypnosis.
Mass Hypnosis.
Who has won? Who has died? Love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. Yeah, I can listen to that record every week. Maybe every day. I don't know. Lots of mosh. Lots of great riffs, sick vocals. It's a perfect record, really. And around that time, everyone was calling them Slayer Jr. Like, they were the next Slayer, they're the next Slayer, the next Slayer, which is probably why Slayer never took them on tour around that time either. So, yeah.
Well, Kerry King actually went out of his way to badmouth them, especially around the release of Chaos AD.
I'm sure
he said that they'd taken a left turn. They could have been great, but they're crap.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I remember reading that very, very clearly in a copy of Guitar World magazine. And again, because of how much I love Sepultura, I was like, "Go fuck yourself, old man! How dare you say that?"
The thing is, they did on KSAD, but obviously it worked because it became a tremendous selling record. So
yeah.
Well, it's also remember that Slayer made a left turn with Diabolus and Musica a couple of years after that too.
They did. That
one of the very worst left turns.
But you know what though? It's like 2 songs. The rest of that record is fucking pretty damn good, in my opinion.
But it's on like
2 songs on that record that are a little jump metal.
I remember convincing myself I liked the record when it came out too. I remember like getting it, being like stoked. I'm like, the record cover looks a little weird. The logo's different. I'm like, we're in the living room listening to this. Me and my roommates were like, yeah, this is good, right? This is sick, right? And we're like, yeah, this is fucking cool. Yeah,
it's good, right? Right? If you're saying right a lot, you might have a point. But there are some good songs on it. It starts out very hard. The first.
I mean, I have grown to enjoy the record. You know what I mean? It's like, but it's definitely a departure from what you would expect from them because they went right back to making Slayer music after that.
Yes, no more jump metal, no more experimentation,
no more 7 strings. No.
Yeah. But yeah, man, Beneath the Remains, fuck yeah.
Until 9:47 a.m. British Standard Time on Thursday morning, Beneath the Remains was my number one. And then I said, just hang on. After I'd send you guys an email, I was like, just hang on. Let me just go back and listen to Schizophrenia one last time, just to be sure. And as a result, my number one favorite thrash album, not the big 4 from the 80s, is Schizophrenia by Sepultura. I think it is fucking astounding.
Yeah.
For all of its sonic limitations, the atrocious drum sound, as I said, the fact that literally you think that your equipment is malfunctioning when you hear it because it is so poorly recorded. You cannot take away from the quality of the songs, and every fucking song is pure quality. Escape to the Void, To the Wall, The Abyss, Screams Behind the Shadows. Everything is fucking great. And I think, again, maybe it's rooting for the underdog that makes me love this album so much, but there's kind of a can-do mentality to the way this album was written, recorded, put out. Apparently, Max wrote all the lyrics in Portuguese and then had them translated. Everything was kind of so haphazard, but in a way that makes it so endearing. And actually, even though I was just talking about sonic limitations and your hi-fi hating you for playing the record, even the rawness of the album, I fucking love. I I think it's incredible. I think the re-recording, as everybody knows, I think that's incredible too. But this
I need
album
to
will
talk with that more.
by a very, very, very special place in my heart.
Yeah, I totally back that. I mean, Schizophrenia, that's one of the early records by them. After I heard Arise, because that's how I got into them, I went back and I listened to the earlier stuff, and that record's solid, man.
And also, fun fact, we were talking about guys that were very young. Andreas Kisser was 19 years old when he recorded some astonishing leads and just some fucking badass riffing on Schizophrenia.
Yeah, I went backwards. I mean, I heard obviously Beneath first, and then Schizophrenia. It's weird. Schizophrenia wasn't as available, I felt like, in record stores. Like, even though it should have been, it wasn't initially first on Roadrunner. Roadrunner licensed it, which probably could be why it later became a little more available, I think. But yeah, I feel like the re-recording, I only heard a little bit of the re-recording. I need to fuck with that more. Everybody I know says it's fucking bonkers, and obviously if you're saying it's fucking great, then I need to finally really sit down with it.
Yeah, definitely check out the OG recording. Definitely. I mean, it's got its own sort of character to it, if you ask me.
I did. I mean, the first time that I heard it, I heard the reissue that had the Troops of Doom re-recording on. So I could never listen to it and not expect to hear Troops of Doom at the end. But yeah, what a record, and what a band. It's obviously sad that things have gone the way that they've gone. I stick by my contention that they should have changed their name when Max left. I think people would have been a lot more accepting of the new material, because I don't actually think it's all that bad. As a matter of fact, there's some records in that part of their discography that I really love, but I mean, there's no question that Schizophrenia, Beneath the Remains, and Arise, arguably Chaos AD as well, was a 4-album streak like few others.
It's weird that they can't get on the same page in a day when a lot of bands are getting on the same page and making a lot of dough and making people happy. I don't know why.
And in a day when Slash, Duff, and Axl could put their differences aside
Exactly,
somehow. Yeah. But there seems to me, as an outside observer, to be an awful lot of stubbornness on both sides. It's kind of like that Eddie Murphy and Martin Lawrence movie Life, where they don't talk to each other for 30 years, and until they're being tortured by the prison warden, they don't speak to each other. And it's kind of that's what I see between Andreas and Max.
Yeah. Well, at least I got to see them win.
Yeah. So as a coda to this exercise, let's hear some honorable mentions. Mike Hill, we'll start with you.
All right, so I got a couple. I have a huge list here, so I got a couple that are highlighted. Let's see. I got "Endless Pain" by Creator, "War and Pain" by Voivod. That was one of the ones that. Well, dude, it was like Killing Technology, "War and Pain" by Voivod. I couldn't decide, what to get with that. Let's see. "Eternal Nightmare" by Violence, "Agent Orange" by Sodom. I also had SOD on there, Speak English. And debate. I had to debate which Carnivore record to pick, so I had Carnivore, the first Carnivore record, on there as well.
Mike Scondotto, what did you have?
For me, it's obviously Carnivore Retaliation, which was almost number 6. Voivod's Nothing Face from 1989. Exodus, Fabulous Disaster from 1989.
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Which I fucking love that record, man. I love it. Everybody, look, man. Everybody drools over Paul Bailoff. Don't kill me. I love Zetro more. Sorry, I don't know. To me, that's Exodus. Maybe it's because of my age. Maybe it's because of whatever. Like, that's Exodus. Bonded by Blood is awesome. Don't get me wrong,
dude. I completely agree. And as much as it will draw J-Dog's ire when I say this, I think Toxic Waltz is a fucking great song.
Yeah,
the break on Toxic Waltz is awesome. And I saw them a couple of years ago playing with Prong and with Obituary, and when they did that break, that crowd went fucking nuts.
Yeah, it's literally one of the 10 single best thrash songs ever written. So
yeah,
J-Dog is incorrect. Destruction, Eternal Devastation, although it literally could have been any of the 80s Destruction full lengths, they're all fucking great. MOD, USA for MOD. SOD, Speak English or Die. And Violence, Eternal Nightmare. It's funny. I was like, it crossed my head about those fucking 1990 records, you know?
Yeah.
And Exhorters, Slaughter in the Vatican.
Hell yeah.
Love it. And Violence's Oppressing the Masses, which I love more than the debut, actually. So, Oppressing the Masses is so fucking good. The late stage thrash, some bangers there.
A couple that are on my list: Forbidden Evil, very, very close to including that. Sacred Reich, Ignorance, incredible fucking album. Morbid Saint, Spectrum of Death. If you go by that list of the heaviest thrash albums ever, that definitely is there. Sacrifice, For Determination. Kind of outslayering Slayer in some parts. I had Fabulous Disaster by Exodus as well. Those are probably the main ones I'd highlight. But that Sacred Reich Ignorance album, that was super, super close to being number 6.
Morbid Saints, another band. Some people will put them on a death metal list.
They did check out, though. They checked out against the Metal Archive.
That's right. That's right.
Question is, what are we going to do? And let's not. I will take at least 75% accountability for the delay, but let's not wait another fucking 18 months to do the next installment of the series.
Yes.
What are we going to do for the next 666 countdown?
Well, it's clear to me that we got to do a funk metal one. So
a funk metal one. Wow.
Besides that, I don't know. Let's see.
Oh, I have an idea. It makes it a little easier. 666 American black metal LPs.
Okay, all right, I like that.
Yeah, that makes it a lot easier, actually.
It sure does. I mean, it's not super easy, don't get me wrong, because we did 90s black metal, right, as a blanket. But if you did say American black metal, just American black metal of the last fucking, 30 years, plus, that would be interesting. What do you think?
Yeah, because the U.S. gets a lot of shade thrown on them for in the black metal world.
It does.
Yeah, and I think that pointing some people in the direction of solid bands.
I'm going to go with Winter Hours, Path of Totality, Savage Gold, Grand Annihilations. No, but I think that's a great idea. Love it. All right. It's a deal, guys. Thank you very much for your time. A blast as always. Great to see you guys both in fine form and in good spirits. And we'll talk again very soon.
Thank you, Jackie. Cheers.
Right
man.
on. Cheers.
Until next time.
Take care, guys.
Thanks, dudes. Bye.
Bye.
Look at me, my feelings turn
Wrapping up a sensational 666 countdown, probably my favorite out of the three that Mike Hill, Mike Scondotto, and I have done so far. That was a Sepultura double play, To the Wall, taken from 1987's Schizophrenia, followed by Stronger Than Hate of 1989's Beneath the Remains. Frankly, if you don't know those songs, you have stumbled onto this podcast by mistake. For that, of course, I thank you. But for those of us long-serving metalists, we know those albums off by heart. And, I mean, even when you include the Big Four, I'd say they would probably figure pretty high up on most people's lists, most real ones' lists. I want to say a massive thank you to my two guests this week. Always such a blast catching up with my fellow horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse. Mike Hill, remember to check out his podcast, Everything Went Black. Catch him again alongside Mike Scondotto on Necromaniacs. And Mike Hill is the main man behind Tombs. If you don't listen to Tombs, what the fuck is wrong with you? But also brace yourself, because the new Tombs album gets released in October of this year. And believe you me, it is easily the best thing that Tombs has ever done. I am very, very excited to hear what people think of it. By the way, if you're watching this on YouTube, the fancy new Elgato lights that I bought seem to be there seems to be a ghost in the machine. So they just switched off, and then they suddenly went really, really bright. But can't be bothered to fix that or redo this segment. But yeah, anyway, back to Tombs. Make sure you check out, frankly, their whole back catalog, but really brace yourself for that new Tombs album coming in October, because it is stunning. We also have Mike Scondotto, co-host of Necromaniacs, as I said. His band Inhuman, due to start writing new music, I believe. So that should be coming your way imminently as well. And Mike Scondotto was on last week's news rant to some critical acclaim, I've got to say. You guys really love yourself a bit of the Outlaw. He'll be back on doing that with me again in the future, no doubt. But hope you guys enjoyed that. We have our theme, our topic already decided for the next installment of the 666 Countdown special. And I promise I won't make you wait another 18 months for that to happen. Right now, my friends, if anybody saying anything negative about your favorite band is something that you take as a personal insult, then buy yourself another box of Huggies and hit the bricks, because this is my weekly news rant.
Round them up for judgment. And hang them where the world can see.
All right, my friends, metalstorm.net is where we kick off as per usual. Before we do that, a quick update on the ongoing saga of old Jackson's Schengen visa. We made a bit of a breakthrough this week, I'm pleased to report. That came courtesy of Katie Irizarry at Suspiria PR, as well as a couple of the folks involved in the organization of Beyond the Gates. They have put me directly in touch with a person at the embassy, at the Royal Norwegian Embassy. Very helpful, managed to resolve what was holding things up. Question now is whether or not the appeal is going to actually be approved or not. As things stand presently, I have 6 working days for that visa to be in my passport. If it's not, sadly, old Jackson's going to be sat here in the UK while everybody's having a swell time in Bergen. If it does get approved, then by the time that episode 283 goes up next week, Tuesday, I'll be in the air and on my way. I will keep all of you posted on what happens on the socials. So if I do end up going, you'll know. I'm going to be filming a load of stuff there. There's so much that I'm excited about that's in the pipeline that I just frankly don't want to talk about until I know for sure that I'm actually going to be at the event, at the festival. So I'll share all of that when I know I'm going. But either way, just wanted to keep you guys posted, since it did form part of, I think, my second ever Swirly of the week. And I know some of you guys have been asking. Either way, just the sooner I get my British passport finally sorted, the better. Next year should hopefully be a little bit easier. I'm not going to be going to Inferno next year because I'm flying to South Africa around the same time to go and surprise my mom for her 75th birthday. But the plan is certainly to be present at Fortress, hopefully Beyond the Gates. Might even see if I can make it to Satanfest in Iceland. So more to come. I mean, as things stand right now, I should also just point out, with all of the face-to-face interviews I've been doing, and all of the bigger guests I've had on this year so far, it's been a pretty successful year for Into the Necrosphere in 2025. Presently, as things stand, I think I'm about to surpass the total number of views on YouTube that I had in 2024. Potentially within the next 2 or 3 weeks, and we'll still have a good 5 months to go. I'm also up about 20 to 30% on average on all the audio platforms. And a lot of that, my friends, comes from the tireless efforts of the Legion. So I want to thank every single one of you guys for sharing episodes, being active on the socials, supporting the podcast, commenting, liking, doing everything possible to hijack that algorithm and make people aware. This is never going to be a podcast that's going to be Joe Rogan size. I'm certainly never expecting, and frankly, I don't want that to ever be the case. It's always been and always will be a podcast made by, in the first instance, me as something that I would want to listen to, but I know by extension that's something that like-minded people would want to listen to as well. So it's a podcast made for folks like me, who love this music, but want a little bit more when it comes to the types of interviews that I do, and like a little bit of banter, a little bit of shit talking. So, that's never going to change, and hopefully your support will never go away either. And I just, again, want to stress that I really, really appreciate it. Moving on to some music. Cutted Flesh drop a brand new song. Now, if memory serves me correctly, the last time we spoke about Cutted Flesh was on the eve of the release of their new album, or latest album, that came out last year, which is hard to believe because it feels like it was much more recent. But anyway, came out last year on Transcending Obscurity Records. It was called Love at First Bite, and they really impressed me. I'd never heard of them before. The name sounded a little bit suspect, but they have been going for, as things stand right now, 24 years. I kind of feel like they do a little bit of recognition. It says here, Czech brutal death metal band Cutted Flesh have unleashed an official video of their brand new single titled The King in Yellow, recorded at Koller Keller Studio. I hope I got that pronounced correctly, by Kai Stallenberg and Daniel Klar. Let's give it a listen. Pretty goddamn good. I mean, let's start with what stands out straight away, and that is the melody. Now, melody can cut one of two ways when it comes to brutal death metal, but the way that it's deployed here, I think, is really effective. It works itself very nicely into the song structure, which I think is also great. There's in that there is an actual structure to the song. It feels like it's not just somebody that is trying to show how good they can play the guitar, or, you know, a band that is just trying to out brutal every other band that has ever come before or will come after them. Like, I mean, this, to me, this ticks all the boxes from a brutal death metal fan's perspective. I think if if the majority of what you spend your days listening to is Devourment and Pyrexia, you're probably going to turn this or switch this on and think, yeah, that sounds pretty decent. But I think it offers a little bit more than that. And on that sequence that we ended off on, that we paused on, where they bring in the keyboards, I think that just adds another layer of atmosphere that works really, really well too. Big call out for me also, Jakub Bayer. I was going to call him Jacob, but let's assume it's pronounced Jakub Bayer, their drummer. Sensational work. Jirka, their vocalist, absolutely top-notch sounding. I think the whole song is probably more than deserving of a top-notch accolade. So, yeah, well done to them. And also, I don't know whether they are referencing Robert Chambers directly or whether it's a reference to True Detective Season 1. Either way, I'm on board for it. So, yeah, nice job all round by Cut It Flesh. Definitely a band that, like I said, they've been around for a long time now. I think they deserve the attention that they, rightfully should be getting. Okay, moving on. New Biohazard is out. Now, a lot of you have been dropping me a line to hear what I thought of this. I'll tell you guys in just a second. We all know I really liked Forsaken, which was the first single that Biohazard put out post getting back together. And, I mean, part of why I liked it was it was the first time that I've heard the Biohazard boys sound genuinely up for it. Like, they genuinely have a hunger and a desire to make new music. Certainly much more so than Reborn and Defiance that came out in 2012. That was a dud. I mean, not a single memorable track on that record. When they played live, you can tell the shows that I've been at where they played anything live off of that, the energy just leaves the room. And then, once they play something off the first three albums, of course, we get straight back into the thick of things. But it was a bit of a false start, I think, and it feels to me like this new record is going to reset that to a degree. It says here, Biohazard have revealed the details and a first single regarding their new full-length announcement dubbed Divided We Fall. It'll be unleashed upon the masses on the 17th of October, 2025. You can check out a music video for the first streaming single, Fuck the System. That does sound suspiciously like a 1998 nu metal song, but we'll forgive them for that. And it's not really the first single. I mean, like I said, Forsaken is the second track on the record, judging or going by the track listing that they've given us here. And they've already released that about 6 weeks ago. So anyway, enough quibbling about semantics. Let's hear what Fuck the System sounds like. I let that one run a little bit longer because I was hoping for fireworks in the breakdown, but it didn't quite get that. That being said, the song overall I think is great. You know, kind of in line with Forsaken, best thing that they've done since State of the World Address, and that came out back in 1994. So we're talking 31 years now, which is again fucking mind blowing to think that that album is that old. Because I specifically remember when it came out. But you know, the guys, generally speaking, sound superb. Billy, he's never really dropped the ball performance wise. Evan sounds fired up. You know, the rest of the band sounds super tight. The sound production is excellent. I believe they worked with Matt Hyde, who also worked with Slayer and Hatebreed for this record. So I'm looking forward to it. And I know this is coming out on Black to Black Records. I don't have any connects there, but if anybody does, hook a brother up, because the Biohazard boys, all four of them, have an open invite to come on this podcast anytime that they want to. I'd love to have somebody from the band on. So if anyone knows Evan, Billy, anybody from the band, and you know can put me in touch with them, then please do. Okay, moving on to a band that I expect basically nothing of, Amon Amarth. I had again a couple of messages from various folks telling me that I'm not going to like this. Grind Your Mind 77. Long-time Legion member, send me a message on Instagram. Good morning. Don't you dare shit on the new Amon Amarth. It's what your friend Mike would call easy listening death metal. Anyway, Amon Amarth, it says here, the experienced Swedish metal force Amon Amarth is premiering a Pavel Trubukin directed video clip for We Rule the Waves, which I assume is not them boasting about how great they are at surfing. Their first new music piece since 2022's album, The Great Heathen Army. Now, The Great Heathen Army, I will say, in their defense, and maybe my mind is playing tricks on me, but I think there was at least one song on there that had a bit of a bolt thrower thing going on, and I kind of enjoyed it because of that. Whether or not We Rule the Waves will be up my street, I have my doubts, but I'm going to give it a fair shake. So here we go. I'm gonna pause it there. I knew about 5 seconds in that I would deem this to be unlistenable crud, and that is exactly what it is. I wouldn't say this is death metal. I mean, you could probably sonically, that's the easiest thing to label it as, but I mean, this is not death metal I listen to. Easy listening, yes. Difficult listening, cringeworthy listening, most definitely. This is for flabby, disgusting geeks that take time out of their busy days playing World of Warcraft and Magic the Gathering to go to a festival where they can sit in the mosh pit and do pretend rowing. I don't like the cosplaying. I get that they want to celebrate their heritage and all that jazz. But yeah, it's just, it falls flat for me on every single level. Hate the lyrics, hate the riffing, hate every single thing about the song. Both thumbs down. Total fucking trash. All right, moving on. Der Weg einer Freiheit streaming a new track. I spoke to Nikita about this, for those who recall, last year at Fortress Festival, and he did tell me that they were brewing up something a little bit different. EOS is the latest new single from Der Weg einer Freiheit's forthcoming music output in Nern, and it is premiered online in the form of an official music video. Let's hear what it sounds like. Lots to unpack here. When that song started, I definitely didn't think that we were going to end up where we ultimately ended up. It was very, very mellow. And I mean, Nocturne, their previous album, that definitely had touches of that in. I would argue potentially Nocturne, but really, quite frankly, most of the Weg einer Freiheit's back catalog you could lump into that easy listening black metal category. But they are a band that I really enjoy, and I thoroughly enjoyed Nocturne, even though it was a bit more mellow. But I kind of thought when I heard the first, 1 minute 40 or so of this song, I thought, well, they've decided to just go headlong into that. I mean, I think we even had a little bit, if my ears were not deceiving me, we even had a little bit of fluting in that opening kind of mellow, ballady introduction. Then, bit of a gear shift, and suddenly we're in 9 Equilibrium era Emperor territory. A little bit of Ruins of Beverast thrown in there for good measure. And with what he was doing with those vocals, that sort of tunnel effect that he was using with the vocals, reminded me a little bit of a ritualistic French black metal band called Malapest. You had kind of similar vibes to that. So, I mean, we're 3 minutes in, looking at the track listing. every single song is really long. I mean, this, I think, is actually one of the shorter tracks. As a matter of fact, it's of all the proper full tracks, because there's 1 2-minute, what I'm assuming is going to be a 2-minute instrumental. This is the second shortest track on the record. So I think it's going to be one where you're going to have to probably listen through it end to end. But first impressions, at least for me, very positive, especially thanks to the fact that we're going into heavier territory. Certainly sounds more, I mean, it almost sounds like there's slightly more traditional black metal in there than there's necessarily been in on the last 2 Der Wachane Fried albums, but still with enough of a twist to make it interesting and to make it unique. So, Nikita was not wrong when he said they're going to do something different. This certainly sounds different for them, and it is getting 2 thumbs up from me, without a shadow of a doubt. All right, Unleashed, A Toast to the Fallen. My Dying Bride confirmed shows in Australia and Japan. Once again, Miko Kotomaki from Swallow the Sun is on vocals. I'm almost at a point where I've kind of said my piece now, finally on My Dying Bride. But I just will say one more thing, because there was an exchange back and forth. Not exchange back and forth, really, sorry. There was an interview with Andrew from My Dying Bride on that showed up on Blabbermouth. And he was talking about how he's not heard anything from Aaron. Of course, we know, if you watched the Iblis Manifestations interview with Aaron, he was saying that, he would love to take a call if somebody's willing to speak to him. I just think that on both sides now, it's time to put this nonsense aside. You guys are in your late 50s. You have probably 2 to 3 more great albums in you, especially judging by the quality of the last record. What you don't want is to fall out with each other, deprive people who have followed the band for years of those 2 to 3 more great records, and deprive yourselves of the opportunity to do it. When people have a falling out, in a work setting, in an office setting, a phone, you have to pick up the phone. You have to get past it. You guys ultimately, Aaron, Andrew, everybody in the band, you're way better together than you are apart. So that's my plea as a My Dying Bride fan to every member of My Dying Bride. Cut the shit. Because you don't. I just would not want, if I'm in your shoes, I would not want to live with the regret of time wasted and an opportunity to make truly great, memorable music wasted. And again, time waits for no man, as the great Jim Leahy from Trailer Park Boys says. Shit clock's ticking. Okay, before we get to Malthusian and their new single, I think it's time for a Swirly of the Week.
No. You like?
All right, now, since the inception of the Swirly of the Week segment, it has rapidly gained in popularity, so much so that I've had members of the Legion sending me nominations for people that you believe are worthy of having their heads stuck down the toilet. However, all of your nominations fall flat this week, unfortunately, in light of I guess you could call him a man who, with one swift and concise comment on Instagram, proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that he is more than overdue a double dunk swirly and an atomic wedgie. That man is called Hobbs _causing_all.this. And in response to a reel extracted from last week's news rant with the outlaw Mike Scondotto, he said, "I'm guessing you didn't attend with how bitter you sound." Now, just so we're level set on what exactly he is commenting on, let me give you a little taste of the reel in question.
My good friend Ed McNamara said something really profound that stuck with me for the last week. He said, as awesome as it was great. It was fun to watch. I couldn't help but think I was watching a funeral for metal in the mainstream.
Well, I mean, I've spoken about this a couple of weeks ago, actually. This idea that a lot of the a lot of the bands like Metallica, I don't personally think has done enough to hand the torch to proper metal bands.
Agree.
And as a result, when they leave, I don't actually think there are strong enough bands in the next generation waiting in the wings to sell out a Download festival, as an example, which is why Download is basically turning into Glastonbury with a few more heavy bands. The passing of the torch has not, I don't believe, and people will disagree with this, but I don't believe has been done to the degree that it guarantees the longevity of the genre, at least in the mainstream, to your point. Now, I don't know whether whether I'm crazy. I don't know whether, perhaps this is a question of us coming across in the wrong way, but I certainly didn't pick up any bitterness from that. As a matter of fact, if you listen to the whole piece where we were talking about the Back to the Beginning farewell show, I think the Outlaw and I were overwhelmingly positive about Black Sabbath. We were overwhelmingly positive about Ozzy Osbourne. We were very positive about most bands on the bill. Every single cover that was done, bit of hate, bit of shade thrown the way of Axl Rose. But that's basically it. For the most part, we thought that it was an absolutely fantastic show. There's zero bitterness there whatsoever, unless, of course, you're an absolute fucking idiot who seems to believe that even the slightest waft of negativity sent the way of one of your favorite bands is a personal attack somehow. Now, I could comment on some of the disturbing things that I saw when I took a look at his Instagram profile. It kind of explains an awful lot. Yeah, I mean, as far as as far as the reel is concerned, the only thing where there was a bit of negativity was around Metallica, and Metallica not doing enough, in my opinion, and Mike shared that view, to hand the torch over to the next generation of proper heavy bands. Yes, they've taken fucking Bokassa, whatever the hell they're called, out on tour with them, and there's been a couple of other bands, Gojira, they took on tour with them. Who gives a fuck? But real deal, aggressive, angry, great heavy metal bands that I like, bands that the vast majority of my generation could like, and bands that I think could go on to do great things in the future. And I've listed some of the bands that I think, that would fall into that category. Metallica have done nothing to elevate them whatsoever. So you've had none of the passing of the torch like you had with Ozzy Osbourne when he took Metallica out in 1986. What's name, Skid Row when they took Pantera out in 1992. None of that. And because you've had none of that, our view is, my view certainly, is that there is going to be a real problem selling out massive festivals like Download once all these bands have retired, and they will. It's just an age thing. They're all going to retire in the next 10 years. And by the way, if you think that's depressing, guess what? The next generation after them retires in the decade after. Cannibal Corpse, Morbid Angel, Deicide, everybody else. Those guys aren't going to make death metal when they're 75 years old. So, I mean, at least when it comes to extreme music, there's a pipeline. There's a youth pipeline that'll keep the underground vital and vibrant for years to come. But that's not the case when it comes to mainstream metal. And if you feel that makes us sound bitter, well, friend, you're an absolute fucking moron. And of course, you are henceforth banned from the show. And I think, if nothing else, you deserve 2 swirlies. Anyway, moving on. Malthusian Unleash Eroded into Superstition single. It says here 3 weeks prior to the release of their Summoning Bell long player, Island's Malthusian have premiered the second advanced single called Eroded into Superstition. This band has a absolutely extraordinary pedigree when it comes to the people that are in the band, but they have never been one that has truly blown me away. Like, standalone as an act, Malthusian is not something that, gets my juices flowing in any way whatsoever. But, again, based on the caliber and the talent of the people that actually make up the band, that it feels to me like it should be different. So let's give them a go. Let me give you a view very quickly on the pedigree involved here, which I mentioned before we started listening to the song. So, first of all, the drummer Johnny King is a member of Conan, Dread Sovereign, Crawl, was in Altar of Plagues, was in Abaddon Incarnate. Tremendous pedigree. I think we could all align on that. Then we've got Matt Bree, the vocalist. He was the vocalist or one of the vocalists on Verminous Serpent. He is also, bear with me 10 seconds, in On Pain of Death. So again, tremendous pedigree. Tom McKenna, their guitarist, a member of Adorior, Grave Miasma, and then Federico, their vocalist. He's been in a ton of bands. He is listed as an official member of Akercocke, Cerebral Bore, Trifiction, Centurion. So he's been in some seriously elite bands. I think that this song could potentially be a grower, and maybe that would be the case with the album. The first record they put out, Across Deaths, was never something that I had any particular inclination to want to go back to. But this, to me, there's promise here. I'm not blown away by it. I'm not going to give it a top notch. But it might get a cautious thumbs up in the sense that I'm at least interested in hearing what the rest of the record sounds like. There is definitely a hint of Grave Miasma here, but I feel like Grave Miasma, that immediately grabbed me. Certainly the previous Grave Miasma record, and it sounds sinister, menacing, evil. This, it kind of has hints of that. But it's not as it's not as overwhelmingly excellent as Grave Miasma, at least not on first listen. That Grave Miasma album, by the way, Abyss of Wrathful Deities, if you haven't heard it yet, seriously make sure you check it out. It is fucking fantastic. But this isn't bad. I'll tell you what I would love now that I'm checking out the people in the band. I'd love a new Dread Sovereign record. I know that, and I've spoken privately to Alan about that. I think there's a general disappointment amongst the ranks of that band with how the album was received. But for my money, I think it's fucking fantastic, and I think anybody that slept on it is foolish to have done so. A while back, by the way, and I every now and then I'll dig up a couple of older questions that I didn't necessarily get around to answering on the news rant. Nico Kotsatos, he sent me a message on Instagram in response to me asking you guys to submit questions, asking me for my favorite song on each Akercocke album. So I'm more than happy to provide that. Starting with Rape of the Bastard Nazarene, favorite song of that album, of course, Hell. What else could it be? Goat of Mendez, my favorite song of that album, and it could be multiple because every single song on that record is magnificent. But Ceremony of the Nine Angles would probably be my favorite one on Goat of Mendez. On Corazon, Becoming the Adversary, again, from start to finish, that is a perfect record. It's my favorite album of all time, arguably. But Becoming the Adversary for me is a perfect way to cap off the album. I've said before, that should be Akercocke's Seek and Destroy, their Angel of Death. They should finish every single show with that song. On Words Ago Unspoken, that one I'm going to come at you guys with a little bit of a swerve, probably one that's going to surprise a few people, but the song Intractable, which is, I think, Words Ago Unspoken Part 2, much more mellow, but fantastic. On Antichrist, an album that I think is criminally underrated, Man Without Faith or Trust. That's my favorite song of that album. And then on Renaissance and Extremis, not an album that I hugely enjoy, but probably the song that I think is the most reminiscent of the Akercocke that I love, and that is one of my favorite bands of all time, First to Leave the Funeral. But that record, like I said, I actually heard it while it was being created. I heard the instrumental demos at Jason's house. Really, really liked it when he played it to me. But when I heard the whole album come together, it was just a disappointment. It lacked the atmosphere, it lacked the sinister vibe of all of the previous stuff. And I don't know whether that's maybe why they're not putting out new music. I mean, I know for an absolute fact that the new album is done. They've been sitting on it for, I think, upwards of 2 years. But whether or not that's ever going to that'll ever see the light of day is probably anybody's guess at this point. So, and maybe, like I said, maybe that's why it's not coming out. I think when you're a band that has set as high of a bar as they did with particularly those first 4 records. I think it's impossible for that not to loom over you in whatever you do after that. Because I think equally people change as musicians. They want to do different stuff, but there's always that, your fans are always going to expect that standard from you. And if you don't hit that standard, they will never, ever accept it. Okay, let's get on to some more music. Grand Cadaver put out a new track. It says here, Grand Cadaver have released their latest single, Darkened Apathy, as part of their upcoming EP, The Rot Beneath, which was set for release on August the 15th through Majestic Mountain Records. Let's give this one a whirl. I was talking earlier about the pedigree in Malthusian. Grand Cadaver have themselves a pretty impressive pedigree as well. I mean, maybe on a personal level, not as impressive as Malthusian, but certainly from a recognition stature perspective, very much so. They have no less than 2 members of Dark Tranquillity. For those who didn't know, Michael Stanner, the vocalist, he's from Dark Tranquillity, and then Christian Janssen, bassist, he's also from Dark Tranquillity. And then you have members or former members from Catatonia, In Mourning, The Grifted, Expulsion, Let Them Hang. Michael is in the Halo Effect as well. I'll tell you this much. I'd listen to the Grand Cadaver, any day of the week and twice on Sunday before I listen to Dark Tranquillity and the Halo Effect. This I really liked. There was something in that opening riff that reminded me a little bit of a slightly darker Typo Negative. That might just be me, but it had a bit of a vibe to that. And then when the song starts, it's fucking great. Really dark, old school sounding death metal with a modern twist. Like I think the Swedish production, that dry sounding Swedish production, I think that really works on the track. I think Michael's vocals sound fucking superb. And when the song speeds up, it just gets better. So I wouldn't have expected to do this, but this is most definitely getting a top notch. Great stuff there, and I'm going to very much be looking forward to hearing The Rot Beneath when it gets released. And more dark music like that, I would hope we're going to hear from the Grand Cadaver. I mean, hopefully the rest of the EP follows a similar track, because I think this is a style that really suits them. Okay, Car Bomb debut a brand new song called Blindsides. Everybody and their mother has been super excited about new Car Bomb music. I always felt like they were a distant understudy to Burnt by the Sun back in kind of the early 2000s, when a lot of bands like that were coming out. And maybe I'll play you guys a Burnt by the Sun track in a little bit. But yeah, Car Bomb was just, they were not a band that ever impressed me as much as Burnt by the Sun, is what I'm getting at. But it says here, as part of their soon-to-be released new EP, Tiles Whisper Dreams, New York-based Car Bomb have premiered the latest new single called Blindsides. Looks like we're going to be treated to an anime music video, so that fucking dweeb from the Swirly of the Week is probably would be beside himself with joy seeing it. But anyway, let's hear what Blindsides sound like. I think that is fucking boring as piss, my friends, and we're going to move swiftly on. But not before I play you a band that absolutely knocks 6 yards of tar out of these jokers. Burnt by the Sun, I mentioned them earlier. They were around for only 3 albums. Soundtrack to the Personal Revolution, that was put out in 2002. The Perfect is the Enemy of the Good, that was put out in 2003. And then Heart of Darkness, their last album, that came out in 2009. I was lucky enough to see them when they briefly got back together again, and I think played London in 2011, it might have been. But they're unfortunately broken up for good now. But a band that over the course of those 3 albums put out music that is way more aggressive, way more manly, and just outright fucking better than the slop you just heard Car Bomb dish up. I'm going to give you a 60 to 90 second taster of a track called Forlani. That was taken off The Perfect is the Enemy of the Good. This is what it sounds like.
Still hurt. By the third time I know myself.
Absolutely excellent stuff there, and definitely if you haven't checked out that band and you like that style of music, can't recommend it more highly. They do happen to feature, by the way, and again, pedigree seems to be the order of the day on the news rant today. They have Dave Whitty as their drummer. He's the drummer for Municipal Waste, Mount Banana, Discordance Axis, Black Army Jacket, Birds of Prey, and yeah, he's been in a bunch of other bands. Fucking fantastic drummer. And getting to see him live, that was a real revelation as well. Okay, let's find one or two more songs, and then we can head over to Blabbermouth. I think, friends, we're actually probably at an end of all of the new news headlines. I know there's new tracks out by Krigsgrav and by Werewolves, but they're not on here at the moment, so we'll save those for next week. We move on to blabbermouth.net, and we've got Obituary suggesting that they could have a new album out in 2026 or 2027. We'll be looking forward to that for sure. There's a behind the scenes with Metallica's M72 tour video crew. Will Carroll from Death Angel saying that they should be a hell of a lot bigger than they are. And they certainly on the lips of the Horsemen of the podcasting apocalypse this week. I think Mike might have said Death Angel instead of Dark Angel about 3 or 4 times. Look, I kind of agree with that. I saw Death Angel without really knowing their music whatsoever. Saw them live back in 2006 or 2007, and they were fucking fantastic. Like really, really good live. I did see them subsequent to that. Wasn't very impressed. So, I don't know whether or not things have changed now, but maybe I just caught them on an off day or an off night. But the first time I saw them, I mean, that really will stand out in my mind as one of the most impressive live bands that I had seen without knowing any of their music. Malevolent Creations' Phil Fasciana remains in ICU following a bacterial pneumonia diagnosis. That's pretty sad news. It says here, guitarist Phil Fasciana of long-running Florida death metalers Malevolent Creation remains in ICU at a hospital in Montpellier, France, after developing a severe case of bacterial pneumonia. Don't know whether bacterial pneumonia is the same thing that Ben Askren, former UFC fighter, was diagnosed with. But I know that hit him extraordinarily hard. He ended up having to get a double lung transplant. And hopefully it's not as severe in Phil's case. But there's a note here to say Jesse Jolly released a video message in which he stated, hey guys, Jesse here from Malevolent Creation. Just wanted to take a minute to give everyone the most recent update that we've received regarding Phil's condition. He's still in ICU in Montpellier, France. On a positive note, it does appear that some of his numbers are returning a little bit to normal due to the intravenous medication he's been receiving while he's dealing with his bacterial pneumonia. It's a very serious condition. Bacterial pneumonia can be absolutely life-threatening in any age group, but most certainly anyone a little younger or a little older can absolutely contract this, and then it can be very quick and very sudden onset. So, yeah. I, from myself, and I would assume everybody from the Legion, certainly hope that Phil gets on the road to recovery again very, very soon. That does not sound like an illness anyone wants. Lines into what I said earlier. Shit clock's ticking. Anything can happen. So don't leave stuff undone, or let negatives hang over or prevent you doing things that later you're going to come to regret. Because, things can just change on the drop of a dime, whether it's, somebody getting involved in a car accident. I said before, there's multiple people that I used to go to school with who have died of heart attacks, either heart attacks or they took their own lives. I just don't, I don't want to live with regret is the point that I'm trying to make. The Acacia Strain announced a new album, You Are Safe from Guardia. I don't like deathcore, but I've always had a soft spot for the Acacia Strain. They've got a couple of fucking seriously good albums and seriously good songs. Live, they're not bad either. The Acacia Strain, Vincent Bennett, Devin Shittaker, Griffin Lander, Mike Mulholland, and Matt Guglielmo on drums will release a new album, You Are Safe from Guardia, via Rise Records. They say the record is unapologetically the Acacia Strain. Take that however you want, the band declares. It's angry, it's sad, it's us. We made a record that made us feel uncomfortable. We hope it makes you feel the same way. There's a single here. Let's hear what it sounds like. So on the plus side, that is a better music video than we've seen in a while. I think that's actually, I mean, as music videos go, I think that's actually pretty good. But yeah, I would hate to say this is prime Acacia Strain. Prime Acacia Strain for me really are the albums that they put out in 2010, 2012, 2014. Wormwood was the record they put out in 2010. That's fucking excellent. Death is the Only Mortal, that was 2012, phenomenal. And then Coma Witch, that came out in 2014. I really like that as well. Those are the ones that I would say, if you want to hear this band at their best, those are the three records to check out. I think they even had some Kirk Winstein guest vocals on one of those, which was really, really good. That song that we just heard now, I mean, I can very much take or leave. Cattle Decapitation, I see, is back performing their entire new album, Death Atlas, in the fall of 2025. Seemed for a while like they were on the skits, that band. So glad to see that they've managed to resolve their problems. Clawfinger announces a new album, Before We All Die. Clawfinger, of course, famed celebrators of the N-word using the hard R, demonstrated on a single they released. I think they put this out back in 2012, and I don't know whether they were trying to chase infamy by being a bit controversial, or whether they were just doing the usual the usual thing for people of their ilk, which is to try and make themselves feel good by virtue signaling, at an almost militant level. But I mean, one of the worst fucking, if you know the song I'm talking about, one of the worst songs ever. I can't see how they have any relevance in 2025, and hopefully their reunion is short-lived, because they're a fucking absolutely atrocious band. I would listen to Limp Bizkit millions of times before I listen to a single fucking Clawfinger song ever again. Frank Bello says the new Anthrax album is done. It's going into mixing now. Don't really give a fuck. I mean, again, all of the bands we spoke about today, all the releases we spoke about today, in my view, way better than anything that Anthrax ever did. Johnny Kelly is really surprised by Typo Negative's enduring popularity. It's pretty crazy. I don't think it's crazy. People had a genuine emotional connection to Typo Negative, and that emotional connection is going to stay intact until the end of time. That band meant an awful lot to a lot of people, including yours truly. And I don't think it's crazy why their popularity has stayed what it is, because great music will transcend its time. People will keep discovering Type O Negative in years to come. In 50 years from now, there's going to be someone somewhere that digs through their parents' vinyl collection and goes, let me check out this Bloody Kisses record. And they'll go, holy shit, that's fucking incredible. Won't be the same when it comes to total trash like the Black Veil Birds, though. Or let's be honest, Sleep Token. Chris Barnes on upcoming 6 Feet Under album. It's shaping up to be one of our best. I highly doubt that, but I don't know. I kind of, when it comes to 6 Feet Under, I don't really think anybody takes them particularly seriously anymore. There is no getting away from the fact, though, that first 6 Feet Under record had some absolute fucking savage bangers on it that everybody needs to check out. Now, speaking of savage bangers, I'm going to wrap up the news rant and wrap up the show with a savage banger taken from the album None Shall Defy. Infernal Majesty, of course. This was my number 2 album on my countdown this week. They came out of Canada. The song we're going to listen to as we close out the show is called Overlord. And once again, just to stress, if you haven't listened to None Shall Defy, do yourself a favor. It's not on any streaming sites, so you're probably going to have to go buy it on Bandcamp or go on Discogs, buy the album. But it is one of the best and most fucking sinister sounding thrash albums of the 1980s. On that note, I also want to say thank you very much to my guests this week, Mike Hill from the band Tombs, as well as the outlaw Mike Scondotto from the band Inhuman, the hosts of Necromaniacs, and Mike Hill, of course, does Everything Went Black as well. We will be back, and it will hopefully not take us another 18 months to do our next 666 countdown. And the more you guys make noise, the more I can, I think the more it'll encourage all three of us to make sure we get our diaries aligned sooner rather than later. But I hope you guys enjoyed the show. I hope you enjoyed the news rant, and make sure you are back here again next week. Guests to be confirmed. It's actually those. I said there's those 3 recordings, and the pipeline is going to be one of those 3. I can assure you, if you are into the music that we play on this podcast, if you've listened this far into the show, I am 100% certain you're going to strongly approve of whoever I get on the show. I'll also keep you posted on what's happening with regards to Bergen. And then only one thing left to say, now that we've got all of that out the way. Whatever it is that you are doing and wherever it is that you are, my friends, stay safe, stay healthy, and I'll see you bad motherfuckers again next week.
Electronic province, souls of voices, riches in the sky. Intent giants, camouflage. The weird clever tells the myth, that's why my other told it. That it's been the gospel to the lying bastards. dominate the distance to circumvent, persecute the conscience of the masses. Helplessly the evil follow, blood right, twirling wrong, answer to the top when in the end. Secretly, blasphemy, testimony.